Hi, everybody. It's S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com. I was just live with Ken Ami, and we talked a lot about some pretty interesting topics. He is pretty well versed on atheism and Christianity, and he's also a Messianic Jew, so he's got a lot of knowledge of the Old Testament. And so we had a fascinating conversation, but I thought I would come over here and do one of those fun little Saturday free-for-alls. But as we're going to start on this sort of thing, thought we'd talk about some interesting topics. Like, for example, I was going to talk about what is going on with our political system today. As many of you have noticed, unfortunately, President Trump and his wife were diagnosed with COVID yesterday. I'm quite familiar with the COVID diagnosis because my son also got one a week ago last Wednesday. And so we're just coming off of our quarantine and his isolation, but I'm going to go get tested tomorrow. And so I'll find out if I also, unfortunately, have this terrible disease. I don't have any symptoms. So if I do have it, I'd be asymptomatic. But the problem is the way it works is if I have it, then we all have to go into quarantine again for another 2 weeks. And so that would mean my kids are out of school for 4 weeks, which really wouldn't be good because the way that the teachers are organizing the work, they don't also film the class online concurrently. Instead, the students who are home, they keep them in the classes. However, the students just basically get the homework assignments and have to try to keep themselves up. And so it's been quite an issue. It hasn't been that much fun, I have to admit. And so I'm just waiting to get outside of this quarantine. I don't feel very free going anywhere. It's because why would you want to go anywhere when you can't? And so I don't want to get caught out there. I do take a bike ride every day, but I make sure I'm across the street from anyone who's coming by. I don't sneeze. I don't have symptoms or anything like that either. And so I want to say hi to people in the chat. I see Digital Gnosis. Yeah, you like my sunflower? Thank you. I've had that too many years now. And then I have, you can be up to infectious 42 days. Ooh, gosh. Yeah, I know. So my son, he apparently, they told me the CDC says you cannot take him. Like I can't actually, they said he's off of the quarantine as of Monday. I'm actually keeping him out until Thursday because my other son is out till Thursday and I'm going to stay out till Thursday, but I'm getting tested tomorrow just to double check. And then I'm going to go back to my school on Thursday as long as I get tested negative. And so that's the whole crazy thing right there. And so I am opening this up. If you want to come in here for the conversation, we have a lot of stuff going on right now. I want to tell you just to throw in some things that I'd like to even think about talking about is one is obviously we have a big presidential election coming up. And as a person who's registered as an independent, you might be interested to hear that I keep flip-flopping on my position. What's new, right? Flip-flopping, you're an independent. But I have to say that there are some pretty interesting things going on. One is I really appreciate the Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. I think she's an amazing woman. She's a religious woman. She has no less than 7 kids. 2 are adopted, and her youngest has Down syndrome. And she's just done a phenomenal job, as far as I can see, as a professor at Notre Dame. She's a Catholic. And the sad thing is there are people on the left who are heaping abuse on her because she's Catholic, which I think is pretty crazy, given that Biden is also a Catholic. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the link in here in case, and Susan looks like she might like what I'm talking. I'm not sure if she likes that, but I see old friends here. Gavin, we got all the good people here. The whole party's here right now. I just see just going down the line on all these people. Let me just see who else we have. Jesse Camping, I think I said Parables, good guy. All right, where am I here? So we've got a bunch of people. I'm just flashing your stuff here. That's how I do it. Okay, so I'm going back down here. I'm going to put this little link in here in case anyone would like to come join me. I do want to ask one thing, though. I had a little trouble in the last conversation with Ken with the sound. His sound was pretty bad, and we couldn't fix it for anything. I mean, we tried to fix his microphone, and we tried to fix that and this. So if you think you might have sound problems, it might not be very fun today because I already kind of was dealing with that. I'm hoping this time we don't have sound problems this time around. So hopefully if you've got a pretty decent speaker or a halfway decent headset or something that the sound is going to be sounding okay without a lot of background noise and a lot of fuzz, that would be ideal. And so here we go. Let me just get this link here. Copy. Okay, so if you're interested in joining, I am doing a free-for-all, which what does that mean? That means everyone has a ticket to heaven. This isn't quite heaven. This is on earth. This is just the fun stuff right here to chat about heaven and to talk about the evidence we have for the reasons why we're so happy about Jesus Christ. And so lots of good reasons to support Christianity. And I see also that the Parables of Jesus Christ actually is my old friend John. He's been in here a while. So we've got a lot of good people. Now, Gavin, I see him in here. Gavin was just in a debate. And so he was in a debate, and he was on Smokey's channel. And I thought that went pretty interestingly. He was talking, so he's welcome. We've got Digital Gnosis here in the conversation. He's going to join me. Hello there, Nathan.
Hey, SJ. How you doing? You're right.
How are you? Now, I did see a tweet from you. I didn't have a chance to, I don't know if I liked it or not, but I saw a tweet that you said that if only something about self-actualization or Maslow's hierarchy. What was that all about?
Like that life isn't so bad when your Maslow's hierarchy needs are taken care of. Like,
yeah, I think that makes sense.
I just bought some biscuits, you see, and I was feeling reflective.
So you're satisfying the food, the very bottom of the hierarchy.
Yeah, as long as those bottom two tiers are sorted, it gets a lot better.
Yeah, no, I always say that too. I tell my students too. I said when you first graduate college, a lot of times you're living kind of hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, that sort of thing. And so finally, when you get out for a little while and you're able to pay your bills and actually have a little savings in the bank, it starts getting much better, and you can actually think about purpose and meaning and self-actualization. And so that gets you to that point.
Yeah, and it's like such a rainy day and stuff today. Like, it was just so nice to sit down inside with biscuits and chocolate milk and
biscuits. Yeah, that is nice. My sister's it's funny because I'm so jealous because my parents, they were supposed to come visit us, and of course, since we have COVID in our house, they didn't, and so they instead drove all the way up to Michigan. And so I checked her weather today, and I'm like, ooh, it's 46 degrees and it's rainy, and that sounds like maybe how it is where you are. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like it's just been like absolutely grey everywhere and raining pretty heavily all day. Just really horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband likes the rain, and he likes the Florida rain is very tropical, so it's like a hot rain usually, right, yeah. And so and then summer is when we get the most rain down here, and so there've been summers where I think, my gosh, it's like 40 days and 40 nights of just rain. When's it going to end? It's awful. So I'm not a fan of the rain, but he liked it because he was working when he was younger. He used to work in construction and do things like that, and so whenever it rained, they all got off. They all get to go home. he was pretty happy.
Yeah, like it creates like a cool atmosphere, but like just when it's like sunny and clear outside and stuff, it's just so much nicer the days. Like I don't know what it is. Like, it really affects my mood. It's really strange. It's like there's like an atmosphere in reality when it's like a rainy day or when it's like a sunny day.
Yeah, they call it SAD, seasonal affective disorder. If you're like I am, actually, right. I cannot live, like, I physically refuse to live up north, even though I have had offers even for dean positions up north. Not offers, I should say. I've had headhunters contacting me for dean positions, and I just can't do it because I refuse to be in that kind of weather again. I grew up in Illinois, and
yeah, and you're in Florida, right? So it's
I've been in Florida since I was 18, and I won't leave.
but like you can go to the beach and stuff, and like that's like a massive difference in like lifestyle. If you can just go to the beach, it's like, I mean, it's probably not like being on holiday because you live there all the time, but it's nicer than like like a drizzly park or something like.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I can go to the beach. I can go. What I do every single day, if it's not raining, is I go on a bike ride. I just cruise around my neighborhood, and there's all these bike paths, and it's nice and hot out. And I listen to YouTube videos, like I listen to your channel.
Well, that's like, I was thinking, even because like California, apart from the existential dread of getting like blown up by a massive volcano or like a
earthquake.
An earthquake or a fire or whatever, seemed like it'd be a really cool place to live, just in terms of weather and stuff like that. But everyone seems to be moving from there now, so it's like to Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
That's and so like in the UK, if you work in software like me, it's always been like you want to get out to Silicon Valley where all the big salaries are and the lifestyle. But now it's like, where'd you go? Like what you want somewhere where it's like nice weather and there's cool stuff. But
that's what's going on down here. So there's a few things that you mentioned that kind of just got my attention, because I used to sell real estate for many years. And so I've been tracking real estate, and I especially track it down in Florida because that's where I was selling it. But I noticed, here's what's going on right now, is not only like Ben Shapiro already announced he's packing his bags. His whole company is moving from LA, Los Angeles, California, to Nashville, Tennessee. And
right.
He's doing it because the prices are crazy in LA. Plus the people are a little crazy right now with some of the protests and all this kind of stuff going on. And the rules are really very tight for people. They don't have any freedoms to go out or do things because of the COVID, and they have such a big population. Gavin Newsom's been passing some kind of crazy laws out there, which I won't get so much into, but he's moving. But then I noticed in Florida with real estate is we're getting a lot of people from New York City, especially in Southeast Florida, where they take I-95 and they go straight down to Southeast Florida. And so when I was down there, I called a couple realtors because I was looking for, I just like to call around and find out what's going on. So I called a couple realtors to get a feel for the market, because I was noticing that it seemed like the houses were getting snapped up pretty quickly on realtor.com and in these other places. And sure enough, their prices had shot up. They're selling houses as soon as they were popping up, and these New Yorkers were buying them like crazy. And so we've seen a little bit of that on my coast, but not quite as much, because we don't have the New York flux nearly as much as they do.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at that LA stuff as well, because what you find with the tech industry wherever it's gone, like Silicon Valley, is that there's these massive salaries, but then that drives up like the living costs in the area. So, like people start on a salary at Google or Facebook of like $150,000 a year, but they actually have like no money a month left over because of the living costs that get driven up in the area so high. And I wonder if you'll see like a similar thing happening to some of the places where some of these companies move. I know like Joe Rogan's moved to Texas, and a few people are saying like they want to follow him and set up around him and stuff. It's interesting cultural phenomena, like people sort of like an exodus out of California kind of thing. Oh,
it's a complete exodus out of California. And Craig Reed is in California. He said New York is hemorrhaging people. He's totally right, but he's also from New York, so he can speak to both. But as far as a couple of things I want to mention, there's no reason to stay if you're telecommuting totally now. And a lot of companies are switching because of the COVID. Right. They're moving fully to telecommuting. So why stay in a very high priced area? Like you said, why not just move? And Texas is one of the cheapest places to live in the whole United States. Right. You can get a ton of you get a big, huge 5-bedroom, 6-bath home with 3 floors for $200,000 tops. And Florida, the equivalent of that would be well over $1 million, depending on where you are in Florida. Florida's got a lot of different areas, but in a lot of areas that could be well over $1 million. California is probably like $6 million. It's such a difference in pricing. Again, depending on where you are in these states, because certain places are more. But Texas has been, especially places like where you see Chip and Joanna Gaines. They're over in Waco, Texas. You see the houses there, these really nice houses for $130,000. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, why am I living where I'm living?
Well, that's the thing. If you can get like a high paying job that's mostly remote and live in a low cost area, and then you kind of can get yourself sorted. It's only like all these jobs in the cities and stuff are so high paying, but it's only that living cost that eats into them. If you could live on like a normal, like normal in the way that most people do, and pull in that salary somehow, you'd probably be able to retire in 10 years or something.
Yeah. Now I was trying to remember, are you in Manchester or London, or where are you?
I'm in Manchester. Yeah.
Okay. So it's I don't know the cost of living there at all. What's it like?
In the actual city, it gets higher. And then there's places, like you've got your kind of variation that you probably get everywhere, where there's some kind of suburbs that are like geared towards students in the university. There's some suburbs which are more like affordable housing and stuff historically. So like when we've had Labour in government, who are like the equivalent of the Democrats, they've like set up government policies and things to build council homes and things like that. So there's like areas of that type which are maybe not always as nice but cheaper to live in. And then there's some areas where like like football teams like Manchester United and Manchester City, there's areas where like they'll all live, and people who are in TV and stuff like that, and private schools and stuff. And it just depends. So it can be really expensive or like fairly cheap, just depending. But if you want to live in the city, you're going to pay quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, Tampa's kind of like that where I am. I'm outside of Tampa. I lived in a place where I can get about 3 times the house for the same price. I mean, I picked an area that's it's 35 minutes from my school. If I had lived in South Tampa, which is really nice and very close to my school, it would have cost, for my same house, which is a pretty big house actually, but it would have cost about 3 times as much money. And so I found this little neighborhood where I love the neighborhood. I love the schools, and I have a lot of UT people at my school for my university. And so it works out pretty well. And so, but I'm not that close to the beach. That's the only bad thing. I have to drive to the beach.
Yeah, and the thing about the beaches over here as well is if you do live in a place close to a beach, it's kind of it's not quite the same as what you're thinking of as the beach. It's kind of a lot of pebbles and murky, cold. Well, I suppose it's still Atlantic water for you, but it's not like a warm, it's like cold Atlantic Ocean water. Like,
yeah. My sister lives right on Lake Michigan, pretty much. She's just 1 block in from Lake Michigan, and it's the same kind of water. That's what we grew up in. Very cold. You can't jump in Lake Michigan even in August if you're sane, because it's freezing. So that's the deal. It's the water comes down there from Canada and just blows people away. It's kind of funny. So that's the other thing that we have about living near the beach is the houses. So my husband and I have been looking down at Apollo Beach because we're thinking when the kids get out of high school, we might go over there, which is right on the water, and you can get a sweet house right on deep water. But you get it's going to be just a little like 3-2 little box house. Yeah. So it's just kind of we'll downsize because we want to be there. And so that would be fun. So, so Susan is in Indiana, I think Susan's in Indiana, and she says, we have Lake Michigan here. Susan, if you're in northern Indiana, you live amazingly close to where my sister is. She's in Stevensville, Michigan. And so I just looked at a map because I saw my dad driving up there. I was tracking him on this tracking device. It's like, I saw him going through Indiana. I'm like, oh my gosh, India's amazingly close to where my sister lives.
Yeah, so you need to vote in a Democrat so as the migration laws become easier, so someone like me can move over to America and get citizenship.
Well, now does V have? Because you could also V has American citizenship. You could marry V.
No, she's Spanish citizenship.
Okay.
She's allowed in the U. So interesting thing though with her is so she came to the UK to go to university while we were still in the EU. So there were like common. Free travel within the European bloc. And now that we're leaving, though we've technically left, but we haven't left properly, so we're going to get sued by the EU. And I have no idea how, one country sues another country or how any of that works. But she's very lucky that she's actually able to stay, because that they were kind of she might have been forced to go back after we were no longer part of the EU or something like that.
Now aren't you guys officially breaking in December? Is that the? But
I think that we have officially left as of October last year.
Mm-hmm. But isn't there some sort of a fit, like some sort of a break? I mean, what I heard is that there's something that's
meant to, but I don't think it can happen legally anymore, and that's why I think the EU's. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know that because it's not been done through the proper legal mechanisms. I think because we waited too long to invoke something or something like that, so the EU's gonna sue the British government. And like I say, no idea how that works. Like how do you go about suing a government if you're another? It sounds kind of like war or something like that. I don't, but it's not obviously that it'll just be a bunch of money. I don't know what'll happen. Actually, we may even end up staying in the EU after all this is kind of said and done. It seems like this government has lost a lot of popularity due to how it's kind of dealt with the coronavirus situation and Brexit and everything. People just aren't too happy with how that's all been dealt with.
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you too, because here's what I heard. Now, I don't know. I've got Spackle here. I'm not sure who Spackle is, but I'm gonna put Spackle in here. Spackle, hello. I will say hello in just one sec. I wanted to ask a quick question with Nathan. As far as the EU, here's my understanding of Brexit. This is what I heard from Francis Fukuyama. So if I'm wrong, then it came from him. but here's what I heard from him. He said that in England, there are a couple of, there's a population of people who are kind of like what we would call the populists here in the United States, the people who feel like they're sort of disillusioned and they got onto the Trump bandwagon. Here in the United States, there's this population that feel like they've been left out, especially white males, middle class, the working class. And so he said that same group is the one that's been pushing for Brexit, because they feel like all of these people are coming in, like Poland and other places, and they're getting displaced from their jobs. And so is that something that's true?
It's certainly got a lot of parallels to what you see going on with Trump in America. Like a lot of the talking points, a lot of commonalities and overlap in the kind of political ideology. there's obviously going to be some differences, and I think, you know, like those differences, for example, would be kind of like that British older generation who they've got like a, you know, like to use the term boomers, kind of have like a particular outlook now in their retirement on what British identity is, what Britain is, what the economy and stuff like that. And so some of those talking points are a little bit different, but yeah, largely it is like a lot of that same kind of current behind it. Yeah.
Interesting. Now I want to say hi. We've also got a couple new additions here. We've got Spackle, who came in just a second ago, and 1 second after that came in Craig Reed. So you guys want to introduce yourselves? And actually, I don't know, Nathan, after that, I don't think we gave you a formal introduction, so we'll have to do that too. So Spackle, you want to go? Oh, wait, your volume's not on.
Can't hear you. Yeah, can't hear you.
Sometimes you have to flip
maybe if you go in the settings on you know,
if
like
I go in the settings,
I'm not sure if you've got the ability to, but if Spackle clicks on the, oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah, I have a lot of different programs, and so like it was trying to assign to the wrong mic, but I'm Holy Spackle. I have a channel called Holy Spackle, and then I have another one called Moderate C Word, and we've interacted on Mod C on
I've seen you
Twitter.
online. Yeah, I've seen you on Twitter, Mod C. Yeah, we've interacted a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a couple of curiosities about politics with you when I came in, because I was just really curious, wanted to pick your brain, but thanks for letting me in.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, good. So I'll put connections to everybody's channels here in the description so people can get a hold of you guys. So Craig, you want to introduce yourself?
Muted, Craig. You muted.
Oh yeah, you're muted, Craig.
He always mutes himself and forgets.
Yeah, so a lot of times this doesn't work on the StreamYard. It hasn't been. Yeah, hi, I'm Craig Reed. You can hear me, right?
Sounds good now.
Am I
Yeah.
breaking up? Okay, good. Because the last time when we were on with Dr. Josh, I was fading in and out, and I had to keep exiting because I couldn't hear everybody. And I'm a Christian apologist, and I have a YouTube channel, Craig Reed TCR, on these streams all the time.
Great. Well, thank you. And Nathan, we didn't really do a formal say who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on here. Probably most of the people watching have like seen me on here before, or whatever. But yeah, I've got a YouTube channel called Digital Gnosis. I'm a software engineer by my job. I'm interested in philosophy and theology and stuff. My most recent interview I did was with a guy who's doing harm reduction in Glasgow. So he's set up out of a van where he's giving like free injections and stuff to people who are on heroin. He's trying to get support from the local government and stuff, and has a GoFundMe. So if you guys are in any way inclined to support that kind of thing, I guess go and check that out. Otherwise, I've got interviews with various prominent kind of atheists and Christians and so forth.
Good. Excellent. So everybody's keeping busy. So that's always good to see, especially in this, especially like me being quarantined. I don't know about you guys, if you're self-quarantined or forced quarantined like I am. So Spackle, let's hear that political question you had.
Oh, so I noticed that when you post, a lot of your posting strikes me as conservative, and your audience oftentimes that responds to you that's Christian is generally conservative, but I think you self-described as Democrat, and I was curious to know how come.
Well, let me put it this way. I've never voted for a Republican in my life. Okay. I was raised a Republican, though. I was raised a big fan of Reagan. And so I thought Reagan was just the cat's meow, but I was very young back then. So I couldn't vote. And then all of a sudden, and I didn't bother voting when I first went off to college. I didn't really care. And so then suddenly Clinton got into office, and I just loved Clinton. And so that was where I started voting for Democrats all the way. And I thought Obama was great. I voted for Obama, but I'm kind of like really unhappy with the way that I'm seeing the both groups, actually, to be honest. I'm not happy about either group. I hadn't been happy about the Republicans for a long time because I felt they weren't giving enough attention to the environment or education. They definitely, I feel like we should give a path to legalization for the 12 million undocumented workers here. I feel like we should have some sort of path towards some better system of universal health care, although I'm totally happy with the Obamacare right now, because I feel like we need something for people who don't have it. However, I think some of the social stuff that I'm seeing out now, and this whole identity politics, and I see this sort of movement that's taking away what I feel is taking away our free speech. I think that that's a big problem. And I'm realizing, like, for example, I don't feel free to say what I want to say, even on Twitter, because I feel like there's all these people on Twitter very busy in the background and sometimes contacting my employer. Oh, she said this, she thinks that, I'm not allowed to think this, and I'm like, well, why am I being censored or feel like I'm being censored? And it's not just me. There are people like Brett Weinstein who lost his job because he made a couple of statements that sounded conservative. And so I say to myself, well, maybe we're going too far socially to the left. And so how are we going to cure some of this? And I see the political stuff, like even these moves with AOC and the new Green Plan, and the new Green Deal. She's obviously not running, but that plan itself is something the Democrats have on the table. And so I feel like I'm just in the middle now. I left the party and I've decided I haven't finalized my vote, but I'm probably going to vote for social issues this time and a vote towards conservative values in this idea that I want to go back to free speech. And I guess I could go on, but that's sort of where I'm in a nutshell.
Interesting. Wouldn't you agree, though, that in the spectrum of conservatism and liberalism, that there is, well, let me actually rephrase that. In the spectrum of the right and the left, that there is authoritarian left and there's authoritarian right.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's libertarian left and libertarian right. And I don't mean libertarian like the party libertarian, but like, I'm a libertarian left. So like, I don't like authority. Like I don't like San Francisco making a law saying you can't have like any soda above 20 ounces. Like, because like, I know it's stupid, but like, I think it's like, it's micromanaging.
Did they really do that?
Yeah, they really did that.
Nanny state. Yeah, that was Bloomberg.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That was actually New York. Sorry. San Francisco had the weird law about McDonald's meals for kids. Yeah. So, but yeah, like that to me is just like overstepping. But what I think is happening is, and just maybe it's just me, but like, it seems like that because they feel like there's authoritarian right, then people are overacting with authoritarian left. I don't know. What do you think?
I see what you're saying. So if we wanted to replace those words, authoritarian on both sides, the authoritarian left is another word for communism, essentially. And the authoritarian right is another word for fascism. And so we don't want either of those. That's the way beyond. The fascists are white supremacists. They're crazy. The communists are just crazy. We already lost 120 million people thanks to communism last century. But I agree with you. In the middle is where you want to be. So there's like the Goldilocks. You want to be in the middle. I do tend to personally lean towards the left. And so, but I'm feeling like this whole thing, picking a person for your political, the VP merely because of her skin color and because she's a she. I just feel like just pick the person who's the best candidate, regardless of what the skin color is. I just feel like that's too much based. There's too much identity politics in this kind of thing, too much race it brought up. And I think that's, the movement, the BLM movement has scared me, to be honest. I think that had a good cause initially, but the people who've latched onto that are in some cases crazy. And so I think that they're shattering in the cities and the Democrats sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, watching it. I'm like, what is going on here? This is nuts. So.
Yeah, well, I'm in a big city. I'm in San Diego, and the protests here have been pretty reasonable. We did have one instance where it got unreasonable, and they burnt down some businesses, and like that was upsetting. But for the most part, like I think that the protests make sense, and that there's a few bad actors within the protests, and unfortunately, that can become counterproductive as soon as you start, burning down buildings and stuff like that. You're really kind of entrenching and basically losing the ear of the other side, and that is unfortunate. That's something that I wish wasn't the case, but.
Yeah, the timing. The timing. It's like a culmination of the what did they call that when the guys were out there on the water? The perfect. No, the deadliest. No, not the deadliest catch.
The perfect storm.
Perfect storm. Yeah, the perfect storm, because you see, we have this whole thing with COVID. all of these people lose their jobs, and they're already upset. There's already this level of people feeling like they're oppressed and power, and they don't have authority, and the big man's taking authority and taking all the opportunities away. And so you've already got this level of disrest. So when you combine that with the fact that a lot of people don't have their jobs and have the time to go out there and march, and a lot of free time on their hands, then you get that. And like you said, there are a few bad people in, like Tampa. We got hit with, there was one video of a Walmart being broken into. They crashed all the windows in the Walmart, and a whole bunch of, I mean, I'm talking like 600 people came flying into the Walmart, all caught on film to just raid it and start stealing. And then there were businesses lit on fire, and they actually called cops to come to something to stop it. The 2 cops showed up and a bunch of people ambushed them. And so, I mean, we just see this stuff. I see stuff like that, and I'm like, where is the order? And I think the Republicans are capitalizing on that by saying, we're the party of order, Democrats are the party of chaos. And as a person who's only voted for Democrats my entire life, I'm disheartened watching the Democrats be kind of pathetic and wimpy in their responses to this kind of stuff, especially the mayor up there in, what was it, Portland mayor? So just looking the other way, the word, the summer of love. I mean, what in the world is going on with these people? They're crazy.
Yeah. I think people hear the cries of the public. I think that most people do know that when people take they say, what is it? Riots are the language of those that aren't heard, like, I think people understand that these people need to be heard. It's just, obviously we still want to have a community where people are still able to meet at the table and connect with each other. And that's the frustrating thing. I think property can be replaced. I think property is something that is replaceable. People are not. So I wish, particularly with conservatives, I wish they could get upset for wrongful deaths as much as they do with the property. Because on my Facebook feed, for instance, everybody's upset about the property damage in the small businesses. And there's very little, emotional impact with folks that are being frankly murdered by police.
Yeah, no, I do feel like there is, I mean, the whole thing is a sort of a disaster. I think everybody, here's the thing that my fear is. So we've got these institutions that were built up with our founding fathers, and I think they've done a pretty phenomenal job of establishing a 3-part legal system where there's checks and balances. It's built to be fair, and it's the rules that we have to abide by are good rules. The institutions are solid. The big problem is we also have this little thing called capitalism, or if people just call it free markets. And there is this thing where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we have seen that in this past century. If you go back to the early 1900s compared to today, we've got about the same level of income inequality that we had in the early 1900s that had leveled out in the 1950s. Like in the 1950s was the lowest level of income inequality in the past 120 years. And that was because we had a lot of unions making sure that the middle class were being supported by big salaries and that sort of thing. And so then suddenly the unions sort of get bashed and knocked down. We had 25% of people were unionized back then. So now we've got about 11, 12%, 7% in the private sector. So very few people are unionized or have those kind of protections. And so there are people feeling like, we're just the little guy. I'm working for Amazon. My boss is the richest man in the world. What is going on here? And so there's huge income disparities, but there's so much to try to fix it. Like I try to fix it in my class. I say, how are we going to, should we raise the minimum wage? Well, then someone says, well, then big businesses will just automate. And so who's it going to impact if you raise the minimum wage? But the small business owner who might just hire one person, pay them a bit more and make them work really hard and not hire anybody who's minimum wage. And so there's so many difficult things to deal with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's part of this is such a big issue. Like I am not a communist or anything like that, but I would say capitalism untethered is completely evil. and we have a system where if you're not growing, if you're not making more each year, you're failing as a business. And so like it is incentivized for these companies to constantly save and have more profits, right? So So it makes sense to pay as little as you can for whatever job you decide is menial and meaningless, and to raise prices. In the case of Walmart, though, like they don't want to raise prices because they want people. They have a base people that will always purchase from them because they have the cheapest deals. So what they do is they say, well, we don't really have any full-timers and we're going to pay you less. And to supplement, here's some welfare. You can go sign up for welfare. We're not going to actually pay you a living wage. I used to work in a grocery store when I was in my early 20s. And I was unionized. And then at that time, grocery store workers in the late 90s, early 2000s was still a job where you could raise a family on. It wasn't like, as well paying as some other jobs, but you could still have a respectable job as a grocer and have a family. If two incomes were in the family, you'd be fine. Ever since, the strikes happened and the unions got busted down, now it's a minimum wage job. It's junk. It's garbage. And people can't raise families. You have very few old timers that actually still work in the grocery store anymore because it's garbage.
Yeah, well, I want to add to that because I think that's a really good point. There's a few things that you said there that I think we should talk about, because one is everybody should know this: 99% of the businesses in the United States are considered small businesses, meaning they have less than 500 employees. Now, I wouldn't call that a small business in my book, but then about 98% have less than 100 employees. I still don't consider that necessarily a small business. To me, a small business is like the ma and pa business that my family had on the other coast of Florida. And my family's still running another one over in the other coast where they have very few employees and they're just really maximizing who they have. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because we've got all these small businesses that a lot of times, like my family pays really well, but they only have a handful of workers, but they pay them all very well, but they're not the norm. A lot of the norm is, we got somebody here. Is that Rob? Oh, good. Hey, Rob, I'll be right there. But the other thing is like you said, it depends on the business. There are some businesses, now we have all of these small businesses, and we have 58% of our people working, though, in the United States are working for big businesses over 500 employees. And in that 58%, that's where you have a mix of some companies like Costco paying people super well, like they paid you. Like the base price at Costco, I think the average is 18 or 19 bucks. Versus you go over to places like Walmart, where I think they made a minimum wage raise to $11, and people just can't live on that. And so it's because of the capitalist system. Now it's totally up to the employers to be generous, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. And so.
Yeah. So an example of a company that treats people pretty well is actually Costco. I would agree. So like Costco, before they were unionized, now many of them are unionized now, but before they were unionized, they had the best wages out of everybody. And some of it, some people think it's the influence of Teamsters. Teamsters was incredibly influential with Costco, but it could also be just the work culture. There's a work culture in Costco that's a little bit different than some other places. And so I think they're a great model for the big box stores. I also think REI is a great model. REI demonstrates that you can pay people decently and well, give people really great, fantastic discounts, make your place so desirable that people come back and work for you every season because they have such a good experience. That's amazing. Like that's, and it's so rare. And so I think companies like that could learn. And what's fascinating too, I want to actually take a swing at liberal-owned companies that are garbage. Amazon doesn't have that. Amazon's a liberal-owned company that treats people poorly, that doesn't really pay very well. And so I think it's interesting because Costco is a conservative company that treats people well. At least my understanding is those owners are more conservative than not. And REI is a liberal company that treats people well. But there's an example of like a conservative company that treats people poorly. That would be Walmart. And then liberal, Amazon. I think both of them treat their employees really poorly. So it is something that is interesting because your political affiliation doesn't necessarily mean that the work culture is going to be good or bad. So.
Yeah, and before we go on, I just want to say hi to Rob of Sentinel Apologetics. He's been in here a few times. So hi, Rob.
Hey, folks. It's been a while.
He's
Hope everyone's well.
coming in from Australia. So
Yeah.
the topic we're talking about right now, although we can keep switching it up, but we're talking about, and this is actually totally up my wheelhouse because this is what I teach. I'm trying to get my students to make sure they care about organizational culture. Every semester since I've started teaching in 2002, I've made students do research projects where they look into the companies who have good cultures and good HR practices versus the ones who haven't. And boy, I've got a long list. And that's how I know what Costco's doing and these other companies. I've been watching them. It's like got my eyes on them.
The only thing us Australians have been watching is the situation with you guys, the debate that happened recently. That's
the Biden-Trump debate. Did you watch that?
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I finally sat down for an hour and a half of it. I think how long it went, but yeah, the one thing that caught my eye was what I put on my Facebook about Biden passing that comment about 200,000 people dying under his watch. How many of those survived? It's like you just said they all died. Like, what do you mean that how many survived? Like, yeah. Anyway,
that's the one thing I worry about. And I just heard I was listening to Brett Weinstein. I know he's a total conservative, and I try to listen to both sides. Francis Fukuyama is my other side, but Brett was just talking about how he's afraid that he was a good politician when he was younger, but he's gotten so old now that he's making these sort of blunders, and so that's a worry. He called him an empty shirt.
Right. Yeah, and then. Like, was it like the next day or 2 days later? Then Trump gets COVID. It's like, yeah. Our country. I mean, 2020 really couldn't be worse. It's like, let's see. We haven't finished the year yet. What could we add to this? And so crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We probably a weather event, maybe 5-6 weather events before the end of the year. Maybe knock out our infrastructure, get rid of all of our electricity for a couple months. That would work.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to say, hey,
please don't say that.
I just want to say, hey, Spackle, it's been a while. It's good seeing you. I didn't expect you.
It's good to see you.
To be online here. That's really cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's good to see you.
Oh, you guys know each other. That's forever. Cool.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We've been in debates on the same team, arguing, trying to argue reason to G-Man about slavery.
Oh my gosh, because G-Man said he knew Rob when he was his Han Solo time. So this must be back to Rob's Han Solo days.
Here we go.
Now
Rob.
it's just filling a few more holes in the puzzle, right? Yeah.
So who's just came in here? Is that Gavin from New Zealand?
Hey, Craig.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Craig.
Can you hear me now?
Craig's back in.
Gavin's
I'm
having
missing the close-up.
Hey, Gavin.
Hey, Gavin.
So Gavin was just in a debate on Smokey's channel. Shalom, Gavin. So I caught part of that debate. There were so many good things to watch at the same time, though. I was going back and forth on YouTube channels at night.
That always happens. What was the debate?
Is my sound okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Who was he debating?
I forgot. Who are you debating again, Gavin? Somebody I don't think I know.
Sorry for the delay.
Oh, no worries. Must be the connection, maybe where you are.
Yeah, it must be like 9 in the morning, I think, for you, Gavin. I think.
Come back there.
It must be the connection. Yeah.
So, Craig, are you guys? Did you also know Holy Spackle before?
No, actually.
Knock. Raging Ronnie the atheist.
So,
Wait, what?
What'd you say?
I didn't get that. I'm not sure. Reggie Morning the atheist. That's what I heard, but that doesn't make any sense. So.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It's 8
Well, I am not an atheist, just so you know.
So, what's your religious background, Holy Spackle?
So I have a Catholic family, but when I was a kid, my mom had moved to Protestantism. And so we ended up kind of church hopping. And so I spent a lot of time in my early youth with Calvary Chapel and Chuck Smith, if you remember who Chuck Smith is, that pastor and stuff like that. And that flavor of Christianity. And then by the time I was 13, we moved to a fairly conservative church, but when you hear Baptist, you think of Southern Baptist, but it is a Baptist church, and but probably in the more tame version of it, I guess. And then at that point, I had become a Calvinist because I don't know, I was just highly influenced by R.C. Sproul at the time, and and then after that, I eventually moved to. By the time I was like 20, I became a Methodist, and I worked in church for about 15 years, and then I was my focus was youth ministry and outreach. And then I got really sickened by the business of church. The business of church and the politics of church are pretty rough. And I left the church. And so then just recently, probably in the year, I'd say I am now moved from Christian to probably Christian deist, and probably more like a traditional like Thomas Paine type. I find Jesus incredibly moving and appealing, but I think that a lot of things in Christianity does not make sense. So
That's interesting.
So
now you're surrounded, except you and Nathan now are surrounded. I've got Craig and Rob here. They're kind of going to be the bulldogs on the Christian side.
No, I don't fight
I'm
with
just
Rob.
kidding. I'm totally
Rob.
kidding.
Yeah, this is going to be impossible.
Yeah,
if I was
Rob is
Michael.
like the top dog.
Rob's too fundamentalist for me. We always end up just talking past each other because just too fundamentalist with those presuppositions.
Wait, Rob is fundamentalist? Is that what you said?
Far too fundamentalist for me. It's that British sarcasm, SJ.
No, yeah.
No, that's classic. So if I had to, if you guys, now this is kind of a crazy question, but I'm curious to see where everybody stands, giving everybody's different backgrounds. If you had to vote for somebody today, if you were in the United States and you were a citizen and you had to pick one of those two candidates or a third party, because I guess there's a third party called something like the Union or something. I heard from Brett Weinstein, which I don't know if it's been brought up, but he said Tulsi Gabbard and Crenshaw, which I don't know Ben Crenshaw very well, so I would look in that. But that's apparently a third party that's supposed to sort of take the best from both worlds, according to Brett Weinstein. But I'm curious. So who would you vote for if you had to vote right now?
Spackle.
You'd vote for Spackle?
Heaven help you all.
It's a hard one.
I would vote for Biden, but make no mistake, I think Biden's garbage. I think he's been shoved down our throat by the DNC, and so is his running mate, and they're garbage candidates. I just think he's less of a manic, crazy person than Trump.
Actually, maybe a better question would be who would be your ideal candidate right now, even just ignoring maybe just a different candidate, could be from the party that you also liked that you wish they would have nominated. You could put it that way too.
Bernie Sanders.
Okay. So get
Bernie Sanders, when he goes too far socialist, he'll be checked and balanced by our system.
Too funny.
And he'll help move forward some of our social needs like medical and stuff like that.
Okay. So my mom was a big Bernie fan. She actually went and was on the phone trying to get people to vote for him a few years back. So what about you, Rob?
Whenever that name Bernie Sanders is mentioned, for some reason, I don't even think about the politics. I just see him as a spitting image of Richard Bauckham. So in that context, probably Bernie, just for the sake of the lookalike, a Richard Bauckham lookalike. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I keep thinking, see, I don't see him as Richard Bauckham. I see him as Larry David on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But
honestly,
we have to fix the infrastructure.
I just don't know. Honestly,
yeah, it's tough. It's probably a tough question.
I'm also saying that in the context of I'm quite ignorant of the political turmoil, I guess, or the drama. Basically, there's, as the saying goes, there's two sides to every story, but there's like two sides at the geometric level of every politician's story going on. Mm-hmm. And there's no good side to any of the stories. Like everyone's chaotic. So
Yeah. No, I could agree with you there. So Nathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you've got some bad choices, right? I don't know. Maybe vote for like Frank Yang or someone, and the actual like who you're able to. But ideally, I have absolutely no idea. Like, I think the way we structure society as a whole is pretty insane. Like ideally, I think we'd somehow figure out a way to like organize ourselves effectively in like local communities and have some kind of overarching network where we manage to organize logistics and stuff. And I have no idea how on earth all that would work out. But ideally it'd be like that. But yeah, I don't, like, is there one human being who can like hold all of these variables in their head and implement this for like, what's it, like 320 million people in America? And well, yeah, no way. So
I have to say, it's the worst job in the world as far as I'm concerned. I would not want that job. I mean, the level of stress that you would have every single day would be just beyond comprehension.
Well, have you seen those pictures of Obama, like before he went in and after?
Yeah, they all do that. Their hair starts out really nice
yeah.
and dark, and it gets really light and gray, and they start aging. So we lost Gavin again. So yeah, no, I'll agree with you guys. I that's why I'm so in a flux, because I don't feel like there's an ideal candidate. And I really didn't have a favorite anyway in either party, even before all of this. None of them really were perfect to me. I mean, it's not that they have to be perfect, but just halfway decent. I kind of like John Kasich, but if I had to pick, he was a Republican who's kind of turned Democrat. So I can relate to his sort of flopping from one party to another. So
I don't think we have the luxury to vote following our conscience right now. Like, I think unfortunately you have somebody that's completely reckless in the White House. And if you don't think he's reckless, look at his Twitter. I do. I don't watch CNN. People go, oh, CNN propaganda, MSNBC. No, just watch him. That's all you have to do. Watch him and judge for yourself. Do you think he's reckless? I think he's reckless. I think he's terrifying. And Joe, like Sleepy Joe, as he likes to call him, like, is Sleepy Joe worse than Trump? I don't think so. I don't think he's as reckless. But
I think here's the thing with Joe. I do think Joe Biden has a tremendous heart. I love the ads that he talks about. I didn't know he lost his first wife and his I don't remember if his daughter or son. Or he lost a child in a car accident.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and I
only just found out about that myself.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think he's a very good person. Like, he's got a tremendous heart. My only main issue with him, if he were 20 years younger, that'd be a shoo-in. That he would be a shoo-in to me.
But just to be honest, I'm going to ask. Actually, wait, SJ and Spackle, and yeah, both of you, you're in America, so yeah. When I read about Biden's family, yeah, that's that two sides of the story thing I was telling you about, but I can't help but go, I need clarification on, this thing known as creepy Biden, like the way he peers around.
He is creepy. Absolutely.
Is that legit? Those those videos that surface showing.
No, it's legit. But here's the thing: like, our choices are creepy Biden who sniffs women's heads and is inappropriate at work. Or our choice is grab him by the pussy. I mean, those are the two. I'm so sorry, but that's what our president said. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, those are our two choices, and both of them are
inject bleach.
Garbage. They're both garbage candidates. It's just, who do you think is less garbage?
And then, because I was looking into Epstein, with respect to the jet. Or the boat, the jet, the island.
Oh gosh, that one guy, yeah, Epstein. What's his name? The one who committed suicide. They said
Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. Is it Jeffrey Epstein?
Epstein's very tied to the Clintons. He's very tied to Trump. He's tied to
noticing, both. Which I can't. Again, this sounds a bit conspiracy related, but just seeing the private vehicles that they were on were designed so even when they're transporting themselves to the island, whatever sexual activity going on the island, they couldn't even help themselves but do that on the plane or on the boat. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is just sick. Like if what's his name? Yeah, Clinton was on there. Was Biden connected with that?
Not that I know of. Biden was not. The people that hung out with Epstein, and Trump says I hardly knew him, but Trump was with him a few times, and there's pictures. Bill and Trump both have had a decent amount of interactions with Epstein and have been to his island. So there you go.
Yeah.
I can say I saw this show on Epstein. What a dirtbag. Here's what he would do, just in case. He found a woman actually who sided with him, who I forgot her name, but do you guys remember her name? The woman he used her as sort of his madam. So they would go to parks where little kids are playing, little girls, and the girls might be maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. And they would get the girls to come to their house and say that they had a job for them. And they'd pick girls that they thought might be economically disadvantaged. And so the girls would show up, and the next thing you know, he'd sort of force himself on them, and then he'd pay them. And then he'd convince the girls to go tell their schoolmates in class. And so the girls would bring their schoolmates over there, and he'd do the same thing to these unsuspecting 13-year-olds. I mean, it's just an absolute dirtbag scum. And ugh, I can't. Yeah. Oh yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell, or Ghislaine, or however she said her name.
Yeah, Maxwell, and she's really creepy. And right now, unfortunately, well, depending on how you look at it, he killed himself, and so like he can't really see justice. Like he took what I say, either the easy way out or he was murdered. We don't know. Supposedly he killed himself. And she, on the other hand, though, like, wow, like what a woman to be the provider for other women and children for this guy. Like, it's just so sickening. It's so disgusting.
Yeah. I will be honest though, right when finishing up my Revelation studies, so I finished writing that end of last year. We would not have thought the way 2020 has turned out. We would not have imagined 2020 the way it's turned out, right? In fact, we were all technically hoping, because it's the start of a new decade, something brand new, fresh. But I just couldn't, like, I don't know if this is egotistic to say, but when I was going through specifically chapter 17 and 18 of Revelation, which is the whole language, Babylon, the harlot, the mother of harlots. In this sense, when I was doing my research on Rome, and because John's context is Rome as being the mother of harlots, and that's another thing, mother of harlots. It's not like she's the harlot of harlots, but she's a mother that looks after other harlots. Like, she's a harlot that brings in more harlots. Which is a very interesting phrase. And so it's just, I just find it interesting how finally in chapter 18, when you have the kings of the earth who collectively represent this thing known as Mystery Babylon the Great, right? That they start, with gaping mouths, they start like finally in terror because, the holy God is about to judge them. And I can't help but go, everything we've seen transpire, like, say in the last 20 years, it seems a bit, it's like politically the way things have turned out, all the nastiness behind closed doors, like it's coming out. You're actually seeing, I mean, I'm not saying that John was thinking about America, but when he's talking about this massive political structure, which is Rome, and how back then in the first century it was pretty bad, and then how like history repeats itself, and now the situation that's going on at the moment, it's just,
well, Rob, you can count yourself lucky that you aren't in a 1913 Germany or 1938 Germany, because then you would be thinking, Jesus is coming in the next, you'd be writing one of those books, Jesus is coming next. Yeah.
Well,
or in Napoleonic France.
Well, that's the Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah.
Or even 1918, they had a plague that was kind of like this plague that we're in. So it does seem like it's cyclical, but you do see my biggest fear. Yeah. But I have a fear. I have this little secret fear, and I fear the year 2033. I'm just going to say this once because here's why I fear 2033. or at least this century, is because Sanhedrin 97 and 98a said that they had 6,000 years of expectations, and the first 4,000 were used with the kings and all of early Israel. Then there was the time of Jesus, was supposed to come exactly when Jesus came, and it's supposed to last 2,000 years. And so when they say that, I think to myself, okay, Jesus' time ended, officially began in the year 33, which puts us suddenly to 2033. And I'm like, oh man, I mean, I don't want to be too, I don't want to be like a Jehovah's Witness or somebody who's throwing that date out there, but there is a date there that's kind of a little scary.
But do you think, SJ, if nothing happens in 2033, say it's this great
I
year,
hope nothing happens.
but if nothing if it's like the best year ever for humanity, well, then do you think you'd be like, maybe, that was just stories and it's got nothing to do with reality? Do you, does it go both ways? So like if something really bad happens, it confirms that belief, right? But if nothing happens, does that then count against the belief?
Well, if nothing happens, then it's not the end of the world. If something happens, we'll all know.
I just want to
totally different. It wouldn't just be the plague.
I want to point out though, I don't know everybody's view on eschatology, but idealism is a view of revelation that looks at everything as both a spiritual and allegorical approach. And the revelation story, or the stories of all the antichrists and stuff like that, sometimes are attributed to people throughout history. So like you could say like there are several antichrists, whether it's, from, Napoleon to like Hitler to, whatever's next around the corner, who knows, Stalin. And then it kind of expands through history. And I always thought that was kind of interesting, because I was raised with this notion that revelation is something that happens somewhere in the future and not today. And there is some other views where they're talking about how it's explaining history as opposed to something that's going to happen way in the future. So I don't know. It's interesting. There's different approaches.
Rob, you've talked about that before, because it's like the idea in the book of Daniel where they talk about the Antiochus, I can't say the name, Epiphanes, I think it is. Antiochus. So you've got people thinking that he was the fulfillment of something that was in the book of Daniel, but yet then others might say, well, maybe it was Nero. And then others say, well, we could go farther into the future. And so some people say that sometimes the Bible has multiple fulfillments of a prophecy at different time periods over time.
Well, yeah. So Daniel, so Spackle, I'm definitely partial preterist. So I see Revelation written 68 AD, so pre-70, the destruction of Jerusalem. The point is, if we hold to a partial preterist view, that means everything in a short-term sense comes to pass, which means it vindicates John's short-term perspective, because guess what? He's writing to 7 churches in that area. Therefore, then we can utilize futurist and idealist. We can have that as an application on the book very comfortably. Because think about it. Even if you don't hold to a partial preterist view, and you hold to either a futurist or an idealist point of view, notice it's by blind faith that you have to depend. Like let's just take idealist perspective. It's like, well, I'm just taking by faith that it ideally applies to me. So to give an Old Testament example, SJ mentioned Daniel. So Daniel 9, the 70 weeks. Well, guess what? In the short-term sense, that's Nehemiah. That's within 2 generations after the exile. So Nehemiah is the Messiah of Daniel 9. But then you have that Antiochus Epiphanes, abomination, desolation thing happen during the Maccabees context, right? But then Jesus comes on the scene, quotes Daniel 9, and speaks about the abomination, desolation yet to happen. And that's 30 years after he's crucified, which is the 70 AD destruction. But then Revelation then says, oh, but there is, Gog, Magog, abomination, desolation language. So he's writing 2 years before 70 AD, but at the same time still looking forward, hence Revelation 17 and 18 is that grand, big Babylon the Great sort of thing, which is yet to happen. So it's cyclical like that. So the Bible is famous for speaking about birth pains, labor pains. and as women know, it increases over time, and
gets worse.
But and the point is, I think the question that we all ask, regardless of the eschatological position, is then when does the birth happen? And so then the Bible makes the claim that the birth happens when Jesus returns, and that's the unknown, like, the what's known as, this is where imminent rapture people come into play. It's like, see, this is where we come in and say we don't know, so we just probably imminent rapture, but then notice they're shoehorning that thinking without thinking about all the other technical stuff. So yeah.
People don't tend to know where their theology comes from. I notice, like one of the things that got popular in the 1970s, there was a big push for, in like the Calvary Chapel churches and stuff like that, there's a big push for rapture theology, and this idea of like, there were these movies, they were called like Thief in the Night and Image of the Beast, and there were these movies about the rapture happening, and wish we were all ready, and kind of like this, it was during the time of like the Jesus freak movement, where people were like thinking, God's going to come any day. There were people that were like sleeping on their roof expecting God to come back and, take them to heaven. And then, 1980s happens, and similar things were happening, where you had 88 reasons why the rapture is going to happen in 1988. That was a book. And,
1988, really?
Yeah. And then
guess what? Something else happened in 88.
What's that?
I was born in 88.
Oh, yeah. He was going to say that. I'm like, I know he's that young.
Yeah.
Well, I'm exactly 10 years
older
than you.
I want to add to what, I'm definitely a lot older than Rob. I want to add to what Spackle just said, is going back, think about the parallels here, though. Think about what's going on right now. What did we have in the 60s? We had the civil rights movement. It was kind of a very similar to BLM, all these people marching, protesting, all kinds of stuff going on. The college campuses were up and a wreck. The liberals were sort of really taking liberal professors, this idea of Marxism, all of that kind of stuff was around in the 70s, to the point where my grandfather, who was a college professor, who was a conservative, left the field because he couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand the hippies. And so then I go back and I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh. So then the 70s came around and we have a bunch of very conservative values. People all of a sudden were back into the families. All the TV shows were focused on the like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and all this kind of family oriented stuff. And you have our big hero in the early 80s, who was Alex P. Keaton, who is the Reagan fan. And so we've got that kind of role model. And then it's sort of, I feel like we're repeating history right now. It's, as far as this is another 1960s today.
Yeah. And I will say.
Thank you for that cough, Gavin.
Gavin coughed and it's
like he coughed
in the phone hung up. Gavin is so funny when he was in that one debate with Skylar and he was leaving the elevator.
Yeah. But
he's hilarious. I want him out here.
I will say this though. I'm not a Zionist per se, like I'm not a dispensationalist, but when I read just Christians in the last 2,000 years, specifically pre-1900s. So, for example, a famous one would be Matthew Henry I think in the 1600s or 1700s, where Reformation Europe, they actually had this Zionist sort of picture that for too long now the Jews are without a homeland because they're taking certain passages quite literally from a geographical context. The whole Kingdom of Israel language. Even though they understood that the church now comprises both Jew and Gentile. So in other words, they weren't dispensationalists themselves. Dispensationalism is like a Darby thing. But the point is,
this was but this was actually for Christianity in that time. It was like, well, if we accept that the Jews worship the same God as us, but they completely reject Jesus, well, then that's a big issue. And then it's only really in modern times that Christians have started going, oh yeah, well the Jews they can be they can be worshiping the same God, they can be saved and stuff. But it is actually historically really Christian to be quite anti-Semitic.
It depends. So that
Mhm.
depends. There has long time been a view of like covenants theology. So like that God would make a covenant, a promise to this group of people for X amount of time, and this group of people. And so the question is, does God go back on a promise? Does God break a covenant?
Oh, I agree. The arguments are there to be made. I get, but and I'm not saying that this is that we should base our belief center, but as a description of history, like historically throughout medieval times, throughout kind of I mean, I suppose the early Christians are Jewish to an extent, but
Mhm.
for a large portion of Christian history, it has been anti-Semitic historically.
I'd say
I would
I'd say that's fair. I mean, that's fair to say what happened in Spain with the Spanish Inquisition and what happened. Obviously, we saw Martin Luther, what his whole idea was with. But the thing is I think that's one of the things I think with World War II. Fortunately, in one way, if there's only a bright light out of that whole horrific event, was the fact that the world's opinions towards Jewish people, if they were that way, I think a lot of them changed.
Yeah, so I would say that history is it's definitely not black and white, because there were a lot of non-Jewish Christians who said, no, this is not the way things should be done. It was actually politically driven.
Right. Sure.
And yeah, so, but putting all that aside, what I'm saying is I find it interesting that, so for example, the Christians who were non-Jew, who see the Jew as made in the image of God, as still needing a savior like Jesus, blah, 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 would be people like Matthew Henry. In fact, that's the irony of the whole thing. Like, Christian scholars were not the anti-Semiticists. It was the people that had political agendas that, with the Christian veneer, caused that. But the Christian scholars, well before World War I and II, they had this vision of kind of like a hypothesis. What would happen if we took the geography of the eschatological prophecies of Israel at the geographical context, but we take that literally rather than spiritualize it? It was just like a question asked, so to speak. And then sure enough, when 1948 happened, that raised the hair on everyone's back, both Jew and Christian.
Yeah.
Quite like, hang on, this is a bit on the nose. And on top of that, then you have other coincidental findings like the Qumran scrolls being discovered around the same year. And then you have the 6-Day War, like in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, now, again, I don't want to be, the whole pro-Israel, blah, 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 blah. But I'm just saying, within the last century, it's and on top of that, technology, science, like, and even human population that ironically Revelation speaks about, a number that is so large it can't be counted. Back then, they didn't even have 1 million or maybe up to 5 million humans on the earth. Now we have nearly 8 billion in the 21st century. It's crazy. Like, it's just, is this all just a big coincidence, or?
Well, I think Rob, though, so maybe you can see my issue though, because even amongst like you, SJ, and Spackle when she was here, and I'm sure Craig, if he hadn't kind of dropped out,
she just left. She said she had to run. Thank you, Spackle.
Oh, okay.
And part of my issue is so there's such a diversity of opinions, right, on all of this, and you can see how you're all kind of going like, well, if we add these numbers together in the Hebrew, or read this bit this way, or isn't it like this a coincidence? Isn't but it's not clear in any way. Like it seems relatively kind of ad hoc to me. But that's not the thing that gets me is like there's nothing that would count against it. Like even if there was like another 1,000,000 years and nothing, like the end times never came and it didn't happen, you wouldn't like go, oh, remember in 2020 when we all thought that was the signs of the times and it's definitely coming in the next 50 years, and then nothing happened for another 1,000,000. So now I've abandoned that belief. It'd still be like, oh, well, like at 11:11 this morning, looked at the clock, and so like that kind of stuff.
Well, let me just say this. So Hugh Ross, for example, I was just reading this book. He's just released it, It's called Weathering Climate Change. I don't know if you
Your
can see that,
background's
but-
blacking it out.
all right, wait. Weathering Climate Change.
Yeah, like-
Just released a couple of months ago, and it's all about just. It's not a Christian book. It's a purely science-based analysis of climate change stuff. Like you can see patterns of the last 200,000 years and all that.
Right.
The point he's making, though, which is quite and this is in the science literature. Hugh says, if we just take what we see in Revelation at face value, that this geometrical enlargement of all things that the scriptures get at, which is increase in knowledge, increase in population, increase in sin, wars, famine, all the so-called signs
That's so
that Jesus
vague,
is.
though, aren't like you
No,
can
no,
say,
no,
like.
But wait. So this is what
Sure.
I find interesting. So those are non-exhaustive terms, but they are still they're accurate enough to sort of have a sort of like a threshold limit, right? Now, scientifically, what the limit is, and that this is the scary. Now we're outside the Bible and we're going straight into science. This is what's really scary. As a species, we actually have between 100 and 1,500 years left on this planet as a species, purely from this context.
Yeah, sure.
So therefore, that is remarkable because when you remember, you just said 1,000,000 years from now and so on. Well, the reality is we have between 100 and 1,500 years to do something.
With various assumptions, though, because that's the thing is, say Elon Musk sets up his colony on Mars, or whatever happens, all of a sudden governments.
Which one happened?
That can't happen.
I don't. Well, I don't know. I'm saying that there's a lot of things that may well happen, that actually mean that humanity doesn't die out in the next 100 to 1,500 years. It's just if we can, like, we might change our economic models so as it's not predicated on massive amounts of consumption and trash values, and then people actually get like free education and start and then use that education to do social good, and we live in a different, like, I think those things would make differences.
Let me ask this, because I didn't, Rob, my husband called me on the phone, so I wanted to
yeah.
What I wanted to ask you is what did he base this number on, the 100 to 150 years? Because I missed that.
Okay, so
is it the population size versus the food or something, or population versus resources?
For the sake of I'm just gonna switch off my, so you guys can. Okay, this is the crux of the whole thing. So this chart here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going back 100,000 years from here. Now, notice the variability of the temperature, right? This is over the last 100,000 years, and now this is the present over here. What's fascinating is from about 10,000 years ago, which ironically is Noah's flood, around 12,000 years in the Persian Gulf, you have then a very stable, it's the climate's really stable, which is very unique because Earth's history is full of this variability going on. And then it hits a stability in order to maximize, in this case, when the human species is on the scene, when agriculture starts, technology then grows. So the last 10,000 years, climate stability right throughout. Now, obviously, the stability is a little bit, going into unstable mode. In fact, I think in the 1600s, it's what's known as the Little Ice Age. But either way, we're going into now global warming. Why? Because geometric expansion of human population, technology increase, fossil fuels, blah, 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 farming, cows contribute big time, whaling industry, reducing whale populations, increase carbon dioxide. So, Nathan, what I'm saying is, I find it curious that even in the light of 100,000 years of human anthropology, we notice the patterns, ironically, within the religious text that says, look, this will happen, kingdoms have come and gone, history will repeat itself, and then look forward to what will happen when this takes place. And sure enough, Revelation, the warnings you see in Revelation, the bowls and so on, As each,
come on. Like so
as
so
each bowl is released, it's like
if God desires to communicate exactly what you are saying to me,
yeah.
there is a more effective way of him communicating that to me than a 2,000-year-old text about a lamb with 7 eyes and angels swiping scythes over the whole of the earth and scrolls being unsealed. Like he could say, tell you what, guys, you've actually only got 3,000 years worth of resources, and global warming is going to be really bad. And actually, Jesus is going to come within that 3,000. Like he could just word it like that, but it isn't.
Yeah, but you are. So what I'm saying is, and especially when I wrote that study, when I step into the shoes of John, he's writing to an audience that understands that writing as clearly as how you would understand God if God spoke to you in that way.
But say we get
3,000
to
years
year
left.
1,499 from now, okay, in the 11th month, and Jesus still hasn't come. At that point, would you go, you know, we're, you know, the wars have happened, the air's really bad, but me and you are still around, Rob, and we go, okay, we've got maybe 2 weeks left to live, and I go, so do you think Jesus is going to come in the next 2 weeks? Do you go, that was actually none of that was true? Would you think you'd do that, or would you go, no, he's got come on, there's still 2 weeks, that, you know, like these are the signs that, like, at what point would you go, this is actually all just explainable in terms of stuff that we can, you know, like in terms of science, in terms of
if we knew the date, then that would prove Jesus wrong when he says that no one knows the hour, and he clearly tells the disciples only the Father knows, and he's fixed it. It's his authority to fix the signs and seasons, because they asked him the same question, Lord, is this now the time you'll restore the kingdom of Israel? He's like, don't worry about it, just do the Great Commission.
But
so you need to sort of
this hypothetical with the 1,500 years, you know, like at that, is there any point at which you'd go, like, this counts as evidence now against these prophecies because it just hasn't happened in so long?
But they haven't. See, the thing is, we still, like I mentioned before, Nathan, if we go back to, we're right now in that period that if we consider the Sanhedrin 97 and 98 to be halfway reasonable, we are still within this 2,000-year crux of a period that, and was that Hugh Ross's book there, Rob?
Yeah.
But think about this, you guys, if you haven't, and I know that actually you both have probably thought about this, but maybe for the audience too, but just think about this. Israel was wiped off the map in the year 70. No other country has come back like Israel did. I know we brought Israel back, but that's 1,878 years past. They come back, and their language, their ancient language, also somebody took it upon himself in the 1800s to resurrect that language. That in itself is pretty darn amazing.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying is, the coincidences seem a bit on the nose. I'm not a Zionist. I'm not an.
That's what I'm asking. Is there anything that doesn't count in? So, like, do you go, well, the fact that the world didn't end after World War II, which seemed like this kind of global war of nations, that's actually counts as, like, is there anything that could even count as evidence against this biblical prophecy for you from where you are now?
What would go against it is if there is indeed no end. So basically, in other words, say another 10,000 or 20,000 years pass by, right? Then 1948 is just a blip in human history. So in other words, I find it interesting that if we take, I have a ruler here. So Jesus is here. This is 2,000 years. Oh, actually, let's say 2,000 years is here, and then here's your last 1,500 years over here. So what I find interesting is Revelation says back here that there'll be a time when the population will be so large, literally in the Greek, you might as well just say in the billions, right? And they had no concept of that back in the first century. Now we have 8 billion people potentially existing on the planet. Then the descriptions of the earth is described in such a way that it seems to match a global warming sort of scenario. And sure enough, the science says we have literally at the most 1,500 years left. Otherwise, the way we're going at the moment, about 100, 150 years left. So in other words, movies like Interstellar is legit, because our next generation.
Hang on though, Rob. if in 10,000 years humans exist, will you then say that the biblical prophecy is not true?
I would suggest that, yeah.
Is that like the pretty much the only thing that could
Or-
like count against it?
Or if Christians saw the logic in what I'm saying, then they'll probably say things like, "Oh, God just extended it or something. He was gracious." But I would propose that, based on my reading of Revelation and based on how I've seen 2,000 years play out, it is heading towards a crescendo. That's my prediction. Educated guess.
What
based
I'm
on-
saying here, though, is if you're not right, if you're wrong with your
But
in
if
your
there's
belief
what I'm
system here,
saying exactly, so
there's
if it
no way
looks-
of talking you out of it.
right.
If you're wrong.
So if it looks like it's going at a crescendo, but then this crescendo sort of pauses and then continues for another 10,000 years, then I'll have to say, okay, then maybe I misjudged and that's wrong. I'd have to agree with that. Yeah.
Let me just, before we have St. Tommy here. He's never been on my channel before, so I want to say hi to St. Tommy and see if you want to say hi, St. Tommy.
Thank you for your gracious hospitality and community leadership. Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Oh, thank you.
And good
So
to
very
see
nice
you
to come
other
in here.
peeps. Don't poop your britches. The plans of men are many, but the Lord's will prevails, and grace is being poured out. And I want to shout out to the
St.
body
Tommy,
of Christ. What's happening, peeps? And all you peeps who are in transition, coming into Christ Jesus. Come on in. Embrace repentance. It'll be all right.
Amen.
Does God
Amen.
require
I love
people
that.
to be
Thank you
saved,
all
St.
for your
Tommy?
patience, and thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
One more thing. Don't forget, our Lord Jesus Christ was crucified and buried and raised from the dead on the third day for the forgiveness of sin. Thank you.
Amen. Where are you from, St. Tommy? Are you in the United States?
Yeah, I am. I'm from New York City and the East Coast of the United States.
Okay. So you're going through a lot of the craziness up there.
Yeah.
And Florida. Yeah, I don't want to leave Florida out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's crazy where I am too. For sure. Well, good.
Are you
Let's-
down
let's,
south?
I just
I'm
want
sorry,
to
go ahead.
turn the question around to digital gnosis. Say, you and I will be we're young enough. So by 2050, which is 30 years from now, I'll be 62 by then. But by 2050, and that's in this book as well, and Hugh is just regurgitating the scholarship, the scientific peer review, where it's literally D-Day as far as so what we do in the next 30 years, in other words, starting literally this year, what we do in the next 30 years is how 2050 will play out, and then the next 50 years after that, so to 2100, because by 2100, if we don't do anything by 2050, it's a point of no return. So right now we are literally at a nice edge to save the planet, and I kid you not, the radical changes that needs to happen, like cut off all beef, literally Hugh saying,
Really?
and this is
Cut off all
Yeah.
beef? Oh, no.
It's the biggest
Remove all
contributor because they
cows.
start methane, and methane's got 4
Methane,
times
yeah.
the retention.
yeah,
of CO2.
remove and crazy stuff like cause trees and grass to grow throughout the Sahara and the Gobi deserts. And here's another interesting connection. I find it curious that God in the Bible, especially in Job, he speaks about the regulation of temperature through precipitation, and there's many different types of precipitation. So, in other words, global warming scientists are all about precipitation levels and its variability. Once you have that sorted, then you can save the planet. But guess what? To get that stuff moving, you need economic humility and no corruption going on in any other means. So, are the nations willing to do it? That's the question.
That's the question for me: are the
Yeah.
nations willing to do it?
Yeah.
I think this is the interesting thing, that actually at an individual level, people are emotionally prepared to do it. But the problem is there's some kind of issue, there's some kind of disconnect between people's values and their ability to enact them, where like middle class people in the UK, for example, will happily watch David Attenborough talking about this stuff and go, yeah, this is really important and serious. And then they will consume like 3 metric tons of plastic every week in their weekly shop and just throw it away and like
steak.
Yeah, and you know, like they'll change their car. They don't care if the rubber's recycled on their car tires. They don't care if everything's left turned on. They don't care about investing in solar panels on their homes. And yeah, I don't understand how you bridge that gap between what people like. I think people do actually care about, but I actually think this is where capitalism's the problem, because we've got a society where people's values are based around consumption and economic wealth and growth, but they're not based around sustainability or virtue. And I think if people could go, who cares how rich shareholders are if we're all dead? You know, if people could take a step back and say, and actually, you know what, that poor person is my neighbor, and some of my money could go in taxes to help them out. And you know, like, it's that kind of greed and selfishness side of capitalism. It's a good thing in some respects, but that needs to go, so as people can say it's actually more important that we live sustainably than that we have, so you know, like that we all have 10 laptops and Netflix and
see I think what's going to happen, though, here's honestly what I think is going to happen, because I've been watching this a long time. I've been following this for a long time, especially going back to Al Gore. I started getting really into it with his Planet movie and all that kind of stuff, Inconvenient Truth. But the thing that's going to happen is people are not going to, in the United States, we're the 3rd largest country in the world population-wise. China's not going to do enough to make anything happen. Neither is India. And then it's really up to us. And Europe, it's up to us, and collectively the EU. So we're the two who have to do something about this, because we're basically the biggest contributors to it too.
Or a virus.
And so since we're such big contributors, we have to do something. Now, here's the problem. Our political system is built around short term. Everything's in the short term. They won't fix our Social Security. They won't fix anything that's long term, because politicians are constantly worrying about getting reelected and the party's getting reelected. Yeah. And so until a complete disaster happens, which I hate to say, like the grid drops out or something like that, people are just not going to be into it. And so it's unfortunately, I think I can see the train going down like into a disaster.
Well, America seems to be far too ignorant on these issues. I don't know what, you know, like, and I think this is where the religious problem actually comes in, because as soon as you start to talk about things like climate change, for example, they've been so politicized in your country that, like, you can't even talk about the evidence without them thinking that makes you communist, or, you know, like you're of the devil because God wants Trump in, and Trump says it's all fine. He says it's not a problem, and like you can't actually talk about the evidence because.
Well, you can. It depends on who you're talking to. It really depends.
Like a lot of, you know, like,
believe me, most people are not that ignorant over here. It's really not that bad.
And Hugh is a pretty considered Christian, going, "Come on, guys, science says the globe."
What's the name of that book?
He is a fringe. He is fringe.
Weathering Climate Change.
Okay, I'll have to pick that up.
But I just want to quickly say that reminded me when you said capitalism. Did you know Christopher Hitchens' last words?
I'm not sure.
No.
Like, you can Google it. Apparently, I could be wrong, but apparently he goes, his last words were, "Capitalism, downfall." And then he died. And,
really?
Yeah.
What kind of last words are those?
And people were confused by that. Like, what, like, and so then some atheists were like, "Oh, is this like some form of insight he had or something?" And it's interesting how you said that, and then it triggered me thinking of that. But I just want to also say, for anyone who's denying climate change, because I know people will say, and in fact, Hugh mentions this in this book, which I found absolutely fascinating. I didn't know this, actually. Hey, Gavin.
Oh, hey, Gavin, you're back.
That there are people that go, "Oh, but the climate seems pretty cool. Like, it's cooler in my area than otherwise, like say 5 years ago or something."
Hi there.
Hi, Gavin.
Hey, Gavin. Well, the irony is that because the ice caps are melting, and then you have a drifting of cold, there's cold fronts coming off through that. Hence, that then distributes itself out, and it's just part of thermodynamic equilibrium, really. And so
Bye.
that gives the false impression that the Earth is cooling, when actually global warming is the reason why you're feeling these cold climates in very unusual times.
See, that's why they had to change the name, because they used to call it global warming, and then all of these people would say, like, well, it's colder where I am, and so then they said, well, we're going to have to call it climate change, and it's the idea of sort of hostile climate.
Yeah.
So, Gavin, can you say hello? Is it going to work here? I know Gavin wants to talk about. He must have an upcoming debate, because I saw it said something about Gavin and praise in a debate. Is that what you wanted to mention, Gavin? Yeah, we're not catching it.
He's going to interrupt whoever starts the next thought.
I can say, no, the thing is just looking at the brute facts, like what you mentioned, around 1800, there are 1 billion people on the planet. Right now, we've got almost 8 billion, I'm sorry. And by 2050, I think they're saying 10 billion.
You just have to.
My prophecy came through.
Oh my gosh.
You got a bad connection, Gavin, I think.
Kind of. You'll have to excuse the delay. I'm well away from you guys, miles away, even further away than Rob.
Nathan, how could you deny God's existence? See, God has a sense of humor. Gavin is here for us.
Exactly. I agree. I'm praise Jesus.
No, there are people, though. I can say, though, even though we know that the numbers are there. So you've got this population that's overrunning the planet, and the resources are going to be drained. And fresh water is a massive problem. So we've got a lot of things going on besides the fact that we're polluting like crazy. We've got the atmosphere being ruined, essentially. And we've got plastics and everything else polluting our oceans. And the water is rising. You go to places like Kiribati, by where you two live, Gavin and Rob, down by Kiribati.
Too much delay, I think.
Yeah, I think. I know. I wonder when you said that. It's kind of like we're on the telephone from 1800s when Alexander Graham Bell was saying something. How long?
This is evidence that Gavin is extraterrestrial, because he's at least 2 moon distances away because of this 4-second delay. The way he's going on, like
maybe he's in the third heaven. Maybe he's he's at the left hand with.
Well,
Jesus
you said we're going to populate Mars. You never know; he could be on Mars right now.
Yeah,
that's a 20-minute round trip, I think, for the signal. So
only when Elon Musk gets his underground cars going, then you get an underground car to Mars.
No, the thing is, actually, with Hugh Ross, you might want to listen to him on as far as the possibility for even living outside of the Earth is. There's no way. And the reason is the atmosphere and the pressure, and there's all kinds of other reasons. But for us to be able to colonize Mars, we're better off trying to figure out with Earth.
I want to do a PhD in terraforming before I made those kind of claims personally.
Yeah, but did you see MIT? Okay, MIT is no slouch. MIT did a simulation of just the trip to Mars, where apparently the spaceship will explode halfway there.
I have no idea about any of this. I'm just saying that I think that that's the direction humanity is going in general, whether or not it will or not work. And
that's another thing. I don't want people to think, oh, Rob, you're being like those Christians and other people that are very pessimistic. Don't worry, don't leave the planet. But I have to be honest, though. NASA, when I forget. He's a politician. I think he was running for president. But anyway, he is the guy who funds NASA. And a NASA representative said, "Look, we have satellites looking at the Earth. We can see that we are terraforming Earth. With the toxic virus of Earth, and we need to focus on our planet first, because as Carl Sagan said, this is the only blue dot that we know, the only home that we know." Yeah, so notions of leaving the planet. So if you think about it, and this is again in Hugh's book, say we do go to Mars, we're not even close to terraforming a place like Mars, because if we focus all our efforts on going and terraforming Mars, the fact even in the process of terraforming it, Earth will die off, humans will die off on the planet, and then everyone dies. Like, so yeah.
Except those
Grim
guys in
times
the
ahead.
ISS. Those guys in the ISS, they'll figure out a way.
See, Hugh goes and writes this book, and Hugh's older, so he says it's going to be out 150 years. He'll die, and then I'll die, and then you guys are going to be left manhandling the planet when we're.
Jesus will come, SJ.
That's true. Yeah.
And my kids, what are they going to do? They're young. They're only 14 and 15.
Well, they're half my age, so when I'm 60,
leave it to them.
they'll be what?
Gavin and I will be kicking the bucket, and you guys are gonna...
your kids will be in their 40s, I think, by the time I'm 60. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're half your age.
At least
Yeah,
the
yeah,
mushrooms will survive because like the spores make it out of the atmosphere and onto meteors, and so there'll be life in the universe.
Yeah, the
And then
roaches will make it after the nuclear bomb, so we'll be hanging out with the roaches.
Another 3 billion years, then they become hominid species, and they're like,
Just like
They turn into people.
they'll go and destroy another planet. There'll be alien Jesus all over.
Oh my
again.
gosh, maybe there was life on the Earth a long time ago, and we've evolved out of roaches. Has anyone ever put that forward?
I think it's mushrooms actually, SJ, because spores are one of the only things that can survive on meteors and in space. I forget the name. Is it
Okay,
panspermia?
we came out of mushrooms.
SJ, I kid you not, in Origin of Life conferences, so the last one was in 2017, they legitimately do a Prometheus hypothesis. You know the movie Prometheus, where you have that ancient alien ship, that alien that dissolves himself into Earth 4 billion years ago.
No, I never saw that.
Oh, okay. So
gotta go see it.
Prometheus. Have you seen it, Nathan?
Yeah, I know exactly.
So that intro scene in that movie is legitimately what some scientists are proposing as just how life started on Earth, and how that evolution then took place from some pre-alien DNA that.
Well, the fringe psychedelic weirdos, like Terence McKenna and stuff, always thought that like human life is like that, and then that like the way they'd phrase it is almost like an idealist way of the slice of reality we engage with is very thin. If you could see the whole picture, it'd be very different. And there's a thing called like alien information theory, where so we're like built on a system that they've made, and they're communicating to us through mushrooms and LSD and stuff somehow. I'm not saying I believe any of this at all, but there's some very out there.
Yeah. But all that's debunked because we can. Guess what? We have astronomers like Hugh Ross that can look back 13.8 billion years of universal history, and it's given that life cannot exist until, like, we're talking simple biotic life, cannot exist until 9 billion years or 10 billion years into the universe's history. So, in other words, you and me, we're literally in the high 90% range statistic. We are possibly the first sentient life forms to come on the scene. In other words, if we came across other life forms, we would actually be the technologically advanced alien, not like how movies depict it the other way around.
I mean, while I agree that we know that life exists and we should look for an explanation for it, I just don't think we know enough about all the factors to really be able to offer a complete explanation of like how it came. Even
oh no, not at all.
And this isn't me saying, oh well, I don't know, I don't know, therefore God or something like that either. I just think I think the actual position is we just don't know enough overall to be like there's life, but like those kind of questions maybe we'll get one day. Like
so Hugh will say that. So Hugh will say, right on the money, Nathan. But here's the other side of the coin. 100% of what we do know, 100%. All the data that we do have shows we are alone, unique, special, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, that's not saying we've exhausted all universal knowledge. No. Even that thin slice that we do know, everything about that shows this is it. And yeah.
I think would be fun is to get Hugh to come on my channel with you guys, and we have like a round table and we talk about.
That would be excellent. Yeah.
I want to get him on
fun?
his occult alien UFO witches.
I want to get that in there too. Yeah, somebody was saying.
mental.
Who is in here? Hellbound Heathen says he just doesn't go for that. I'm like, I'm sorry, I totally believe that.
It was so great. Like so because of the stuff Rob says, I was like, oh well, Hugh Ross must be kind of respectable. And then when I'm sorry to say this, but when I heard that, I was like, wow, this guy's nuts. Like,
no, but if you read what they call residual UFOs, you have to really look into this and the evidence that they have for really bad things happening to people. It's just look into it. He says it coincides with the occult practices. I listened to everything he said, and like when it was kind of like when people posit a soul in philosophy of mind, when he was like oh, the meteors are caused by non-physical, and it's like, well, he was like, the impact craters are caused by something non-physical. It's like, well, how do they cause the impact craters then? Like, what he was saying just didn't make any sense. No, he's saying that the craters form there, but there's no physical evidence of the actual meteor itself. Just all of a sudden, a big inversion forms there.
So how does something non-physical have physical causes?
Yes, yeah. So in his book, he'll get into like supranatural, like it's a quasi-natural, unnatural thing. In other words, what Hugh's doing is he's depending on, and this is a whole other field in the paranormal, literally UFO. There's UFO scholarship. So
right, people
like Michael. In fact, I have a whole 3-hour video on my channel where Michael Heiser and Hugh Ross teamed up at a UFO conference because, like Richard Hoagland, I think if you know his name, Richard Hoagland was the kind of like the Kent Hovind of UFO research.
Okay.
So literally, that's probably the best way to summarize Richard Hoagland. So he's the one, for example, that says the face on Mars is a legit alien structure, for example. Hence, he's the Kent Hovind.
Okay. Yeah.
So Hugh Ross will say no, face on Mars is not.
Pareidolia, right?
Yeah. Michael Heiser will concur with Hugh Ross. Now, here's what's interesting between the two of them. So Hugh Ross at the UFO conference says, Richard Hoagland, you're saying aliens exist. Well, as an astrophysicist, I can tell you, and he literally gave a lecture in 2004 saying, the best in science says we're alone. Then Michael Heiser comes on the panel and says, okay, I'm the theologian here. Does Christianity have a say in this? And sure enough, believe it or not, the church has been talking about this in the early church father material about other worlds, other lives, life forms, and blah, blah, blah. The church fathers concluded, if there's other life forms, praise God. But as far as we can tell, no other life forms. We're special. So then you have the theologian and then you have the scientist sort of agreeing on that point. Then the question we should ask is, but we do see these quote unquote residual things taking place.
So it must be demons, right?
Well, no, again, you can't throw all these wild, like, oh, it could be demons, could be. We don't know. But that's why it's called an unidentified.
What he's actually saying, it sounds really ridiculous, and that's kind of because it is.
Yeah, but naturally, as a Christian, he's saying that, right? He's concluding it. But what I'm saying is, I will play the skeptic here, and even I would tell Hugh, look, I see where you're going with that, but at the same time, I'll defend Hugh in saying Hugh's not making this up because this is in the UFO scholarship where you have this RUFO, they call it, residual UFO. And you have Navy pilots themselves. I mean, you saw those videos that were released. They're not doctored, they're legit government official.
But this is kind of like Demon of the Gaps.
Or some form of UFO of the Gaps or something, right?
Well, we have the UFO phenomena. It's the positing of an explanation where we don't know what that explanation is. Yeah. It's kind of like, like with the abiogenesis, it's like, well, okay, we have life. This thing demands an explanation, but we're not just going to go with like some answer from my presuppositions because I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want to fill it in. I mean, you try to do. We do. Anyone would try to find any natural explanation first before trying the other one. I want to say hi to Hellbound Heathen, who just joined us, and he's been up there in the chat. He's protesting everything that Hugh Ross says about UFOs and the occult.
Right.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Rob. I was listening
Hey,
to
man.
you, and yeah,
Hey.
Hugh Ross is. I mean, he seems like he's an astrophysicist. He seems really intelligent, but
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, I've been practicing the occult since I was 13 years old, and I'm 53 now.
Oh, guys, I've just seen a UFO out my window. I've got it. I've just seen a UFO. Now you've joined the chat.
Well, of course, because they are actually interdimensional demons. It's the same thing that Alex Jones believes. They're interdimensional demons. That's what they are. And they come down to this planet and they cause havoc. So when you're a person, you're walking down the street and you have an evil thought in your mind, that's actually a demon. It's not your responsibility to have that thought. It's demons that are behind it. And these are caused because people like me practice my particular religion. So Hugh Ross, among one of the things that he wants to do, is eliminate the ability for me to practice my religion. So,
no, I don't think he's doing. I don't get. Actually, totally don't get what you're saying. Can you say that again? Because are you thinking? Or say that again? Because I don't think he's trying to eliminate. I think he's trying to discourage the occult.
You really need to listen to his. You really need to listen to his videos. Excuse me, his interviews that he's had. He had an interview on the 700 Club where he, in a roundabout way, said that if we eliminate occult activity, these UFOs will cease to exist.
He did say that.
So what he's saying is people like me who practice the occult, if we somehow one day stop practicing it, that these UFOs will suddenly disappear. So what that says is that if I stop practicing my religion, he won't have any demons running around. That's essentially what he's saying.
I see how you're thinking that.
Yeah.
See, I don't believe that if you guys stop practicing, they're going anywhere. In my view, I think that if there's, there's another dimension on this world, and I think that they're not. I mean, maybe they won't be obvious to us. I think that might be what Hugh Ross is saying. We wouldn't have the encounters with them.
Yeah, well, Hugh Ross makes a lot of assumptions, just like Rob is talking about, like having meteorites that come out of the sky and hit the ground, and there is residual evidence of it. There is. He's even said it. You know, there's a plantation that gets burned. There's those little marks around it. But most asteroids or meteorites, I'm probably using the wrong term. I forget. One is one or the other. But anyhow, when they come in through the atmosphere, most of them burn up. So you'll see a falling star, and then it doesn't hit the surface of the Earth. Go ahead.
No. We can even if the meteorite starts to break up into like sand particles, right? Even as small as sand particles. Guess what? But the point is the distribution. We can actually radiometrically sort of notice. Oh yeah, okay. This is the trail markings of, you know, in this case the meteorite's fallen in this direction. It's given off a certain amount of debris, even down to the micron level, and we know this is extraterrestrial in the sense of a physical extraterrestrial object smashing through. Hugh Ross's point is, and again, Hugh Ross. This is not unique to Hugh Ross. He's regurgitating.
It is unique to Hugh Ross.
He's regurgitating the Rufo scholarship that says when we do go to these spots, just like we do with anything else, nothing. This is weird. Why is it there?
Because
that's the question.
Okay, when he doesn't have an explanation, which he calls residual, when he doesn't have an explanation for the UFO, which is an unidentified flying object. So if an airplane sees an unidentified flying object, he or she reports it. And then it is either found out to be there's a reason for it or there was no reason for it. I believe he says like 90% or 99%, some number like that, of those are discovered to be what they are. Like a weather balloon, meteorite, another airplane, bird, whatever. Then there's that very small percentage, it's like 1% or 10%, it's a very small number, are unknown. Those are actually UFOs. Those we don't have an explanation for. So what does Hugh Ross do? He jumps to the conclusion that because there's no way that we could have life come from another habitable zone outside of our universe, that they would actually make it here, that these have to be interdimensional demons. Why is that the only conclusion?
Well, what's an alternative? Can you think of an alternative? I think I've got
We
something
don't
else.
know.
Okay.
We don't know.
Can you? Is this?
Yeah,
Is this clear for everyone to see? Because so just explain this from a purely naturalistic lens. All right, this is a list not from Hugh Ross. This is from the Rufo Research, independent from Ross.
Yeah,
So
he references those.
So that's what I'm getting at. So there's a summary of the situation of a Rufo. So Rufos leave no physical artifacts even after crashing.
Why don't you define what a Rufo is for people?
So
please?
residual unidentified flying object, meaning 99% of the so-called UFO phenomena is actually hoax. It's the 1% residual, right? It's an outlier. So they generate no sonic booms when they break the sound barrier, nor do they show any evidence of meeting with air resistance. They may be seen but not photographed, or they may be photographed though never with high
Can
resolution.
you hold on 1 second? Can you hold on 1 second? Okay, the very, very second one. They do generate a sonic boom. If it enters our atmosphere and it has an iron core and it doesn't break up, it will create a sonic boom. However, there's no way that there would be any instrument around to actually detect it. So I don't understand why that second statement is. We should say that that's accurate, because it's not accurate.
Well, guess what?
They do create a sonic boom.
Wait. Guess what? In Rufo Research, this is why we have the gravity wave telescope. And that thing is
telescope. Did you just say?
Yeah. So in other words, this thing is so sensitive, it can pick up the vibrations of trucks on the other side of the planet. Like, yes, we can sense things even in the atmosphere, and even a little like, oh, yep, a meteorite's just come into the atmosphere.
I'm going to be honest, Rob. At this point, I feel like I'm in that Louis Theroux episode where he goes to like the alien hotspot, and the guy gives him like a mind gun to shoot the greys as they come through the portal.
Right.
Hey, Brenda.
So we got another addition here. Brenda joined in.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So,
okay, cool.
This is a whole list that needs to be explained. From a naturalistic perspective, and
so the second one, I don't know. Whatever. There's nothing to. I hear what you're saying, so I'll accept it on that. But I don't understand how. One of the things that Hugh Ross does is he doesn't cite all of his sources. I mean, he cites his professional sources, but he doesn't cite how he came to his conclusions.
Look at all these footnotes.
Yes, but those footnotes are crap.
No.
If you have footnotes,
it must be true. I have footnotes. It's got to be true.
If you have a footnote, it doesn't mean that your footnote is accurate. If you want to hit one of those footnotes, we can then analyze one of those. You want to do that? That's always just pick one at random and let's verify it.
While you're doing that, I just want to say, while you're doing that really quickly, I just want to say, I think that was Nathan making a reference to Monty Python. I've got a footnote.
Oh, no, it's Brenda. I think.
Yes, Brenda.
It was me making.
Were you making a joke on Monty Python? I just heard the word footnote.
I'm making a joke. Yeah, I'm making a joke. Just citing footnotes doesn't mean anything.
Oh, that was funny. That's funny. I thought you said it because I thought it sounded like Monty Python. Like, I've got a footnote. It's good.
Okay.
So a lot of this information
Can you
is
see this
based
footnote
off
I
of this
just
guy.
highlighted?
Yeah, thank you. So this Jean-Jacques Vallejo, I'm probably mispronouncing his name.
Jean-Jacques Velasco.
Thank you. So then we'd have to actually go and look at this book. And
It's not a book. It's a paper in Journal of Scientific Exploration.
Oh, okay. Well, my mistake.
So, but notice the title: Report on the Analysis of Anomalous Physical Traces, the 1981 Trans N Province UFO Case.
I
So
feel
he's
like
he's debunking it as,
you know, the way you've kind of framed, like, when you say the naturalist needs to give an explanation, it, from within the naturalist worldview, it would be to say we don't yet have an explanation of this phenomena, but we want to figure it out, and we're not going to jump to demons. That would be that, you know, like it doesn't have to be, well, this is caused by, you know, like the naturalist can say we have an incomplete physics, or there are things we don't know.
So now this is ironic, because Richard Hoagland, the Ken Hovind of UFO research, says exactly that. There's unexplained new physics we don't know of yet, and hence, I kid you not, he then goes, there's a hyperdimensionality physics that these alien species used, like Interstellar, to come through a wormhole and do their thing.
Yeah, but that's clearly ad hoc.
Yeah. So Hugh Ross is not making an argument. These are naturalist, atheists.
He's not making an argument?
Well, to be honest, that sounds about as plausible as demons to me. Like,
so Nathan's getting it. Nathan's actually getting it.
Well, let me just take a break really quickly and say it, because I don't know if I've introduced, if Brenda, you've had a chance to introduce yourself, and Hellbound Heathen. So hello.
Hi.
I think you've been on my channel before, if I'm not mistaken, a while ago.
A very long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome back. And then Hellbound Heathen, I know you've been on here a couple times.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I introduced myself. I guess I didn't. Yeah, I'm Hellbound Heathen. I have a YouTube channel. What I do is I debunk a lot of occult conspiracies. And the reason why I do this is because people do suffer real world consequences from a lot of these crazy conspiracies that get out on the internet and actually infect people. And I do call it an infection. Good example is Comet Pizza, where some guy went in there with a rifle demanding to see the basement. And there is no basement there. So please, if you hear something that sounds weird and it involves adrenochrome, Satanists, a cabal, the Illuminati, reptilians, aliens, please double check it. Please look into it, because there's a good chance that what it is it's absolute 100% bullshit. And so that's what I do on my channel.
Well, let me go to Craig too, because I forgot to say Craig came back, and so.
Can I just say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just one thing, that I have a channel too. It's separate from this one. I just call it Brenda Debates, and it's very low effort channel of just recordings of me on Discord.
Okay,
and
great.
Different things, mostly flat earthers, mostly to laugh and point at.
Okay, so you got another channel too, and then Craig, you want to say hi? You've had a hard time getting in here today. I know you keep going back and forth. He might still, his phone was going out a little bit. Okay, all right. So back to the.
We cannot hear you, Craig. Craig, we cannot hear you.
I like that. That's another good accent too.
I have heard my name. I can't hear anything.
I can hear you now.
I can't hear you guys. It's going like dang, dang. I can't understand. I think I might be able to hear you now. Try talking.
Okay, we can go back to Rob. Rob, you want to? Well, so maybe we should we switch the topic from roofie?
That's a topic.
Roofos.
I don't think so.
So that's one of those topics that obviously it generates. Now, I should ask you, Hellbound Heathen, you said for 30, 40 years now you've been following this occult. I think you said 40 years. What about, like, do you feel like there's an interaction with a spiritual realm there? Did you feel like are you getting any sort of spiritual interaction or anything?
Yeah, sure. I think most of your viewers know this, but demons are not actually part of some occult practices. There are some occult practices that are very Christian based or Hebrew based, and they obviously, they reference demons and angelic spirits and stuff like that. But most, like myself, I practice more of like a pagan type path, and that when I say that, what I mean is the culture specifically to Europe. Celtic cultures, Greek, Roman, stuff like that. And we don't have demons. That's all biblical. That's all from your Bible. And, that's your stuff. And, more power to you. But I don't believe in demons. So
let me ask you this really quick. So so you're saying there definitely is a spiritual presence. So all of the interactions, in your view, the spiritual beings, are they all always really nice? Are they always really generous, forgiving?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, SJ. But there are some people who practice the occult who believe in demons and spirits. I am not one of them. So I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in demons. Yeah. I don't believe in angels. Those things I don't believe in. And the reason why I don't believe them is because I have practiced the Goetia, which is a spell book that is specifically designed from medieval times, medieval Christian, mostly superstition, and it actually has, how to summon up a demon. And it's when I did it, nothing happened. So I have never experienced any of these things that people say that I'm supposed to experience.
That's probably because you didn't really use a virgin. She was probably
lying. That's why. Yeah, right. Exactly.
There are no virgins. There are no virgins.
Virgins are very hard to come by nowadays.
Not in the Muslim heaven. They keep recycling.
Well, no, I think Brenda was referring to the old, satanic panic idea that Satanists run around committing murder, which is something a lot of people actually believe, which is absolute bullshit. If somebody does commit murder, they should be turned into the police and arrested, regardless of whatever religion they practice, whether it's Christianity or whatever. But yeah, so I've never experienced stuff like that, and it's not part of my worldview. I'm more of a agnostic spiritualist. Like I find meaning in my life for things that I don't understand, that I still want to understand more, but I don't believe in demonic spirits. I believe that inside of us, we have the choices to make. We can either live our life in a way that is more beneficial for other people, or we can live our lives where it's just us and we take and we consume and we just, basically the idea of the concept of good and evil lives within us, and we nurture whichever side of that we want to nurture. So every person has the potential to be a horrible person or a good person, and we make that choice every single day.
Yeah, I agree. Free will. I figure you guys, we probably have about 10 more minutes, 15 minutes or so to go. So I wanted to see what direction you want to take this in. Oh, who did we lose? We just lost Craig again, unfortunately. So what would you guys like to chat about?
I suspect he didn't have a very good connection.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Well, maybe since Brenda came in last, maybe she could figure out a topic.
Well, I don't really have one. I'm just sort of trying to be a little more active in the debate fields and stuff. Most of my discussions recently have been with, most typically with flat earthers, and trying to sharpen my debate tactics. I have found debating flat earthers has been helpful to me in sharpening up. Number one, I have to do research and figure out what the hell it is that they're saying and what the best, most effective counter argument is. And then I have to put up with a lot of shit. And so being able to handle, not the debate itself, but all the mechanics around the debate, like dealing with people that are less than fully together. it is part of it too. And so I'm always trying to do that, and that's what I've been trying to do. But I'm a very lazy YouTuber. I just sort of record the Discord debates and talks and post them, and I don't really do much editing, and so it's low effort.
Cool. So we could wrap this whole thing. So we've talked about politics, we've talked about Revelation, the book of, religion, Christianity, the occult, Hugh Ross, all kinds of good stuff. Global warming, global climate change.
Yeah, I know.
So,
What was your take on global climate change?
I've never had a doubt that it's man-made in a lot of ways. I mean, certainly there's certain effects that I don't know about from science that have affected the Earth, because I can't speak to that. But just our sheer population itself speaks to that we're going to have some issues.
Okay, cool. And what were your political discussion about? What was that about?
We were talking about
because I'm aware that you're probably conservative and probably a Trump supporter, but I'm just wondering, how do you feel about his recent hospitalization? I do not join with other people that are celebrating this. I want Trump to live.
Yeah, I do too. I'll tell you, Brenda, I didn't vote for him. I just said it earlier. I voted Democrat every election I've ever voted in.
Oh, okay.
But so I'm a registered Democrat. I'm an independent though now. So I just have to say I'm not sold on either party. So I'm kind of just sort of hanging out there trying to figure out what to do. I want him to get better. Obviously, I don't want anybody to battle COVID. COVID's horrible.
Yeah. So. For me, I live in Minneapolis, and we've had a lot of trouble here in this summer, and that has had an effect on me. And so my position lately is simply that protests are okay. It's okay. Go ahead, protest. Don't burn shit down. Don't do that.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
Don't do that. That's here. Let me get it. That's a big no. Don't burn shit down.
Yeah,
that's sort of my highly sophisticated political stance right now.
No, the riots, they've gone too far. Obviously, the riots are just horrible.
Yeah.
So we can all agree on that. You've got Hellbound Heathen in here. He's a Republican. He's the token Republican in the room.
The token Republican. No, I'm pretty much like you, SJ. I've been a Democrat all my life. But yes, this election I did switch to Republican. I will be voting for Trump. And the reason why is because we don't have another alternative. And I think that Trump has actually done a really good job. And a lot of the attacks that he has received, in my opinion, are not justified. He is abrasive. He is he's an obnoxious businessman. That's who he is. And one of his problems is that he's not a politician, but it's also his strength. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. That's why, in my opinion, he's able to get a lot of the things done that he's been able to do.
What has he done that you point out as being particularly worthy of notice?
He's improved trade. He's really making our economy very strong because of a lot of the trade deals that he's done. He's been working out a lot of Middle East peace deals. He's getting our troops out of the Middle East. He's addressing critical race theory, which is basically it's segregation and racism, but wrapped up in a new package. He's really done a fantastic job in addressing the COVID situation by having
You give an A plus. You give an A plus for his handling of the virus.
I would give him probably a B plus or an A, because first of all, this was a novel coronavirus. So we sort of understood it, but we didn't understand it. So there was a lot of the information that we had was based off of the WHO and the CDC. So people were saying this, and then later on they were saying no, and then back and forth. So with the information that he was given, yeah, I'd say probably a B plus or an A.
So how do you feel about the fact that he withheld evidence that he knew it to be bad, and nevertheless, he withheld it anyway? How do you feel about that?
I feel that there's probably a lot of information that he knows that a lot of other people
Yeah, I'm not
don't
talking
know.
about other information. I'm talking about that information. The fact that he knew that it would lead to many, many deaths, and yet he withheld it anyway.
I don't understand how he could know that. How could he
Well, that-
know that it would cause death?
Yeah, that's reported in the media. He did know, people did know, and he chose to withhold that anyway. How do you cope with that? How do you explain that?
Let me just pipe in here, because I think one of the reasons why I jumped on the fence, there's a bunch of reasons why I jumped on the fence and out of the Democratic Party, but one is because on January 31st, Trump made an announcement that China and Iran were no longer going to be able to fly over to the United States. He cut air traffic quite a bit. And at that time, Joe Biden called him a xenophobe. Nancy Pelosi got out there and said she was going to go down and eat in Chinatown, and in I think it was New York City, where she was going to talk about San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So they were completely against Trump for doing that. And the fact he did that actually saved a lot of lives. And so that was one proactive move that Trump made that took a ton of flack. But then for the next month, they were so busy trying to impeach him that nobody's paying attention to what's going on with the coronavirus. And it wasn't until the middle of March when everybody finally realized.
No, I'm talking specifically about Trump. He knew about the severity of COVID.
So, hey, Brenda,
he deliberately avoided.
He fucked up. There you go.
Okay.
There's the answer. He made a mistake. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Because I'm sure you probably have a long list of negative opinions, and that's fine. But people aren't perfect.
I'm just talking about facts and not my opinions. And I'm just wondering how you were dealing with that.
That fact is kind of, again, it's a novel coronavirus. So that means it's a new coronavirus. So a lot of the information that was coming out of the WHO, the CDC, China, a lot of this information was, they were saying the masks were good, then they were saying masks weren't good, and then this, and then that. So there was a lot of different information. And so you're saying that he had insider information about the virus.
Yeah, he did.
So
it wasn't insider. It was, and there wasn't really conflicting information. It was
that's fine.
From actual scientists and not clowns on the internet.
Yeah. So that's so. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that.
By clowns on the internet, I mean anti-vaxxers and people who are not actually qualified to have opinions, spout a lot of opinions on the internet, right? And so that's
right.
Clowns on the internet. But actual scientists, and it is a new COVID virus. However, it is part of a family, corona. It is part of a family of viruses for which we do have a lot of information, and we are able to extract a lot and extrapolate a lot from that, and so it's not totally unknown or unknown. It's not unknown, and it's not unknown where it came from. It's not unknown how it affects people. It's not unknown.
Well, let's go to, and so I agree. There's definitely, like Gavin said, there are definitely clowns on the internet, and we encounter them, people who are making conspiracy theories. And I think I see what you're getting at for sure. That's not something that's healthy, obviously. And there have been a lot surrounding COVID, obviously. Yeah, but I wanted to, I've been on the line here for quite a long time. So I think we need to kind of draw this to an end, but I wanted to see if we can go around, maybe, and each of you share what you're working on or how people can reach you. I'll try to find your links and put it in the channel.
Go ahead. All right, I'll start. Thanks, SJ, as usual.
Thank you.
These free-for-all things tend to be quite juicy. It's just I like the way when you title it, because you title it like how I title my Q&As, where I just keep it oblivious, because when people go in, they don't know what to expect. So at the moment, in fact, I might be premiering, I won't be live streaming, but I'll be premiering a video maybe in about 2 hours from now. A new series, kind of like my Daniel series, but this is more, I felt convicted to demonstrate what is the bedrock facts of the Christian faith. So all to do with the resurrection, historicity of Jesus, all that stuff. So expect the first episode to land within 2 hours from now. So
that's awesome. So Sentinel Apologetics.
Yeah, it's called The Bedrock Facts of Christianity. maybe 15 episodes. So yeah.
Good. And I want, hopefully you'll also do your Mark write-up and your Revelation, because I haven't had a chance to read those, but I know I'd listen to them in audio if you had those recorded for sure, because I could do that on my bike ride. I can't read while I'm riding.
I'll have to record for that as well, yeah.
So fantastic. Thank you. So let's go to either Brendan or Hellbound, whichever one of you guys wants to go.
Oh, well, I have a channel. It's called Brenda Debates. It's just an alternate. I separated it from my main account. I thought that would be a good idea. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea. But it's simply a record of me talking to people on the internet, or typically over Discord, and typically about flat earthers. And that's who I mean, clowns on the internet. I mean, people who believe in flat earth, people who believe in conspiracies, people who are anti-vaxxers, extremely dangerous anti-vaxxers and things like that. I wouldn't, there are people who are not clowns on the internet. People like Sean Carroll, Sabin, various physicists, and there are science channels that are very good and informative. But there's a lot of dross on the internet.
Okay, so what's your other channel? Is it Brenda Ossen? Is that your last name?
Brenda. I just title it Brenda. Brenda
Okay.
Van Ossen. Brenda Van Ossen.
Van Ossen, that's right. Because I know I've seen you on Twitter too. I think I saw you today.
Yeah, I commented on a couple of things. I was trying to be relatively polite. I disagree with you, and I disagree strongly, and I let people know that I disagree strongly, but I don't.
If I don't answer, it's not because it's just
Yes,
because I really
lot.
don't have a comment when I see some of your comments.
Yes, you try to you tweet it awful lot, and you treat kind of deliberately to get reactions. You do that.
Well, look at the title of the last video I made. It's totally clickbait.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Clickbaity. Yeah, that's fine.
Honestly,
that's what
how
most
could you?
people are looking for on Twitter,
How could
right?
you get? I can't see how you could get triggered by just the way SJ just is so innocent, the way she smiles and like. Yeah.
Well, I don't. I think that people, certain people, have been a little bit unfair, but not always terribly. I think,
Oh, I've made mistakes. I for sure. I mean, I've sent 95,000 tweets, and people have definitely identified a handful of them I'd like to take back, but I can't. So I'm like, okay, I just got to deal with that. This one person sends tweets that I did 4 years ago all the time, and I'm like, okay, I tweeted that 4 years ago. It keeps coming up about once a month, and it's like, okay, I said something dumb.
you can.
Sorry.
I think
And you'll never live it down.
Exactly.
That's the way it is, though.
Yep. So Hellbound, tell us about yourself.
Well, I think I pretty much kind of really talked about my channel,
Okay.
but I'll definitely put it out there. I know that I may seem rather abrasive and I am analytical, but I'm open to talking with people. Like Rob, I put a comment in the chat box here. I'd love to talk to you if you ever want to one-on-one about Hugh Ross and maybe get into some more finer details and spend some time, because I think it's important to find out. Okay, bye-bye. Because I think it's important for us to understand where we're coming from and have a certain level of respect. I do have respect for Christians. I think that Christians have done a lot for the world. And I think that there is a lot of persecution against Christians. I think and Christians receive a lot of flack. So, and I understand that because I've received the same kind of flack, and I've also received the same kind of misrepresentation. And I think it's good. We can all live in this world, practice our religion, and get along. That's how I really believe.
I know, SJ, I know you have to go, but Hellbound, just quickly, what books of Hugh, at the top of your head, have you read of Hugh Ross's works? I'm not huge into Hugh Ross. I did a video response to him when he was on the 700 Club. So the only book that I've read is The Lights in the Sky, and then there was another person, a scholar, who did a review of it, and it was just a paper that I printed out. So to answer your question, that's the only book that I read, and that's where I would focus. I don't know a whole lot about Hugh Ross. Well, if I were you, just
no, Rob, I'm not into that.
No.
I'm not into being educated on him. Again, it's not. I don't want to discuss Hugh Ross. I want to discuss one particular theory that he has.
Yeah, sure. All I'm saying is he's legit. So this book is
That doesn't mean that
non-fiction
all
book.
of his theories are legit. Just because you have a PhD in something doesn't mean that your opinion about demons coming from interspace is
well.
factual.
Actually,
Anyhow,
it's
we can
not
get into this another time.
Yeah. All I'm saying is you're right in regards to titles next to a name.
Mm-hmm.
This is why you see how he demonstrates his dissertation or his PhD training in how he utilizes the data points. And all I'm saying is books like Weathering Climate Change or Improbable Planet, those are purely science works, thoroughly researched, thoroughly prepared, and the guy is vindicating his integrity with the scientific literature. And since you've just said you've read little Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, great, because then I've tracked down every footnote in that regard. And for example, the guy named Mark, I didn't really like his
The
segment
co-author.
book. Yeah, I liked Kenneth Samples.
Mark Clark and Kenneth
Yeah, Mark
Samples.
Clark. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really. I just skipped him because he just wasn't. He was the non-specialist in the book. But Kenneth Samples was the theologian. Hugh Ross was the astrophysicist. They presented some really interesting content. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, just because I have a PhD in something doesn't mean that I also automatically have a PhD in something else. So.
Yeah, but
That's
again,
true.
you just ignored what I just said about you have a title to your name, but then you see how that particular individual utilizes the research points to make a point. In other words, he's not a climatologist, and yet climatologists are appealing to this book. That's what I find interesting about Hugh Ross, how he approaches the data points. He just allows the data to speak for itself. And
okay.
He's done the same thing with UFO research.
Yeah,
okay.
I've read 5 of his
you.
books. He's good. His Improbable Planet was the first one I read, and I have to admit it was quite thick and almost very hard to read because it was so dense and so deep into the science. But it was really interesting. So anyway, so you guys, thank you so much for coming in here today.
Yes, thank
everybody,
you,
please like and subscribe. I forgot to do my little banner, but please like and subscribe, and do come again. And until next time, thank you. Keep your heads up.
Night. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Esther.
All right. Bye-bye.